silent so that they don't disrupt and so everybody can hear. Okay, and so we don't have to all start dancing to your ringtone. All right, and just to let you know, we haven't been told about any fire drills today. So if we do hear the fire alarm going off, please just don't all make a dash for the door because there are a lot of people in this room. But if you could just walk as calmly and as carefully as you could to the door. The fire exits are back out through the main door. Okay, and if you could just follow a member of our staff team, and if you have a quick look behind you, our staff members and our volunteers can give everybody a bit of a wave so you'll know who's safe to be following. Okay, we need to go out. Okay, so if you hear the fire drill, it is for real, but hopefully that doesn't happen today. Okay, just to let you know.
They can hear now.
Oh, lovely. Okay, so just to let you know as well where the toilets, gents and ladies toilets are. So through the main foyer, if you keep going if you just keep walking through the doorway on the right hand side, I think it's the first red door is the ladies, just past the stairs on the right, the gents toilets. Okay, I think I've covered more or less everything. All right, lovely. So I'm going to then hand you over. Oh, I don't know if I actually said, I should have said, some faces I definitely know in the room. But for those of you that don't know me, my name's Pam. I'm Pamela Burke. I'm the Chief Executive at Enfield Carers Centre. And it is a pleasure to see so many carers in the room, so many that I do know, and so many that I've known for years, and also so many new people. Real pleasure to see you all here. And I'm going to introduce you now to, we have a number of trustees from our Board of Trustees here with us. Some are online as well. This is our Chair, Tim Hellings. I'll hand over to him shortly. Our Treasurer, Neil Yeomans. Got a couple of trustees here at the front, if you could just keep people away. Caroline Bernard-Moxie and Patience Wilson. Okay, and I know we do have some more online, but I won't go through all of the names because it doesn't mean anything to you guys in the room. But thank you, trustees, for joining us online, and also welcome to everybody else that's joined us on Zoom today. All right, lovely. So I'm going to hand over to you, Tim, if that's okay.
Okay. So this is the formal bit of the agenda. So we've got some my mic technique needs to brush up. Do we have to go through some of first of all, the minutes of the last meeting? Yeah.
Yeah.
So on your agenda, you should have a copy of that. So the first item is to approve those unless there are any amendments or alterations.
Okay, so and just to explain, so there are a few members I know that are in the room, people who have become members of Enfield Carers Centre many, many years ago, and they're with us. So they are the ones that we're asking now they will have already received copies of the accounts, copy of the minutes of last year's meeting, and a copy of the resolutions that are being proposed for this meeting. They will have that documentation already. And it's those people that we need to ask to formally approve and second those. So I know that there are always keen people in the room, keen to support Enfield Carers Centre, and they want to approve and second, but actually we can only take that from members. Okay.
And have we had any proxy?
We haven't had any proxies.
Right.
We have had some apologies, but we'll do those after the
Okay.
meeting.
So that's the first resolution. So we can agree the minutes of the last AGM. The second resolution is about, as part of our constitution, trustees have to retire by rotation in a formal way. And for this year, we've got Anne Campbell and Hannah Lyson, who are due to be re-elected. So can I get acceptance that both Anne and Hannah are re-elected to the board?
So,
oh, right, sorry.
Patience to propose and Caroline to
second. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Can I just go back to the minutes because we need to do the same? So can I have somebody to propose adoption of the minutes and someone to second, who's one of our members or trustees?
So would somebody like to propose again? Thank you, Caroline. Patience? Yeah, good, okay. So we've done resolution 2.
Okay, so we're going to add James.
And yes, we've got a trustee who, for reasons of ill health, had to stand down over a year ago, but thankfully has made a very good recovery and has expressed a willingness to come back. So it's proposed that our new trustee, James Hobbs, is accepted back on the board. I think James is online with us, so hopefully you can hear us. So again, could I have a proposal to accept James? That's Neil, and the second? Patience. Okay, thank you. Right, and then resolution 3 is that the ECC annual accounts for the year ended 31st of March 24 be received and adopted.
So shall we wait until Neil?
Yeah, I was going to say Neil will be presenting those shortly, so we'll come back to that one. And then finally, to approve auditors, Brian Paul Limited for 23, 24, and 24, 25. So again,
We'll do that. I'll do that.
do that. Okay, Neil's going to handle that when he deals with the accounts. Is that, I think, all on that bit of the agenda? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll continue. So this part of the agenda is really an opportunity to look back at the previous financial year in terms of the activities that the centre was engaged in. And as Pam said, on your chairs, you should find copies of the annual report and also an impact statement, which I think is an interesting document because it also gives, in carers' own words, the differences that
We've got some spares. Yeah, do you want to bring them in and then we can share them? You probably won't all be able to get a copy, but certainly we can circulate what we've got. Bring the accounts in as well, Jackie, and can hold on to them after. Yeah.
okay, sorry. Yeah, so I was, you still waiting for copies?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they're on their way. So yes, just to go back to the impact report, when you had a look at it, as well as the facts and figures about service development, you'll also see quotes from carers saying what it's meant to them and how it's actually hopefully helped them in their day-to-day lives. So I think when as I say, when you've had a chance to look at it, you'll be able to see that there has been quite a bit of progress made during the year, both in terms of services provided and reaching out to more carers to support them. And thankfully, it's all been done within the financial resources available. I'm sure Neil will be giving you more chapter and verse on that in a minute.
Sorry, just a minute. Someone's phone ringing? Okay. Hello.
So I'll hand over to Pam and Neil in a minute to give you a bit more detail on the activities and the finance. But before doing so, I'd just like to I see another few hands going up.
No
They're
further reports,
okay.
it's fine.
I'd just like to spend a couple of moments flagging up a couple of items in the annual report at the very end about future plans, and just note a couple of the challenges that are raised there. And the first one is around whether the centre is going to be able to continue to develop and reach out and support the number of carers it does, and also to reach out to the numbers of Enfield carers who perhaps haven't yet or do not yet know about the centre. So what would be the size of this problem? Well, you'll see from Pam's presentation in a minute that we've been adding numbers to the carers register steadily over the years, and at the moment I think it currently stands at just over 7,500.
Yeah.
But in contrast to that, the last census back in 2021, in answer to the question, do you look after or support or give help to anyone with long-term mental health or physical conditions or problems and illnesses associated with old age, the answer was 25,000 Enfield residents, which is about 8% of the population. So there's clearly quite a gap between the people that we currently know about and are reaching out to and the potential out there. And it's significant that the census question doesn't actually use the term carer or caring. And this is significant because in the most recent Carers UK study of carers, it's called the State of Caring, the finding was that a lot of respondents don't actually necessarily see themselves as carers or identify with that term. They perhaps rather see themselves as undertaking their normal roles as wives, husbands, partners, sons, daughters, etc. And so there's potentially, I think, a lot of Enfield residents out there who we don't know about who would maybe benefit from getting to know what the centre has to offer, because another finding was that it takes on average about 2 years for some people to recognise themselves as carers. So in that time, they could have issues with financial problems with their physical or mental well-being, or problems in juggling caring with work and other responsibilities, for which they could be getting help which they don't necessarily have access to now. So the challenge for Enfield is having the resources to be able to continue doing the outreach work that's currently undertaken in settings like GP practices, hospitals, schools, and other community settings, where information is supplied about what's available, referrals are facilitated the centre, people are signposted on to other appropriate sources of help, and also staff in those centres are helped to have their awareness about carers' needs raised. So it's about resources, and that just brings on to another point which is made in the annual report about resources and the challenges there, and one that is quite imminent, and that is that the centre's main contract for supplying services for core services with the council is due to come to an end after its 7-year span. And during those 7 years, the centre has been able to consistently meet and in some cases exceed most of the, or all of the targets that have been set in terms of how those services are run. It's also during that time been able to forge some very good partnership arrangements with local statutory organisations and other voluntary sector organisations to enhance the services we supply. And also, as in addition to the council's main funding, it's been able to source other pots of money, for example, the Big Lottery Fund, which has been able to help provide the Young Carers Service. So that's the challenge for resources, and I think that given that track record which I've just outlined, I think the centre is in a good position to be able to go on and get that contract renewed in February 25 when we have to make the application by. And I think a lot of the credit for getting to that position, that good position, is down, of course, to having a fantastic staff team of staff and managers led by Pam, who've been able to provide services in a committed and a way and work together as a team to support each other. And we've also been very fortunate to have support as well from a group of volunteers who very generously given up their time and their skills to help out in a variety of centres activities, ranging from helping out on the desk and reception to giving IT and digital support to taking on mentoring and other responsibilities for helping with young carers. So I'd like to take this opportunity to just thank both the staff team and all of the volunteers for all the commitment and hard work they've shown during the year, and leaving the centre in a position, I think a positive position, to move on to the challenges that face it in the next year and the years to come. So on that hopefully positive note, I will hand you over to Pam. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Does it sound okay, I presume? have to change as I get up and start speaking. All right, lovely. So most of you that want to have sight of a copy have now got sight of a copy. Is that right? Lovely. Okay, good. So I'm not going to be reading through the whole impact report, but it's just to say that each year we like to produce a report that just gives a little highlights of what we've done in the previous year. So we are always looking back. We're looking back to the year that began in April 2023 and ended in March 2024. Okay, so if you're wondering why there are certain things that are not in there, well, one, the report would be endless and nobody wants to lug around a great big tome. So that's why we keep it quite lightweight, but we are always looking back. And as Tim has explained, we have continued to support a growing number of carers. And at the moment, I think in the report, it says that the number at the end on the carers register at the end of March 2024 was on page 15, 7,466 adults. So at the moment, I think we're at around 7,600, 7,800 carers on the database, and that's just adult carers. We do also support young carers, and we have around 557, I think. No, actually probably more than that, because that was the last year's figure. So at March 2024, it was 557 young carers we were supporting as well. And the young carers that we support are from the age 5 up to 18. Okay, and some of them have some very complex caring situations because they are perhaps a sole child in a family where it's a single parent family. So it literally is just them and mum or dad. Okay, so just think about that, because you all know, sitting in the audience, you all know what it's like to be an adult carer. And maybe some of you have been caring for people since you were young as well. So just spare a thought to some of those children that are going through what they're going through. So in the report then, just a couple of things I want to highlight. There is, there's a case study, an adult carers case study and a young carers case study. So you can always have a look at that. Read that at your leisure, and that is on pages 12 and 13. And it's just really to give you an insight into how we've made a difference to those particular carers in those case studies. Okay, just to see that we've made time, we've taken the time to listen to those carers' needs and done what we can to change and improve their circumstances. The rest of the report really gives you a snapshot into some of the statistics, just telling you the type of people that we're supporting, what their caring situations are like, the types of disabilities that they're caring for, the breakdown in terms of the different ethnicities, because obviously Enfield's a very diverse borough. So you can see in one of the statistics there, one of the charts there, that we're caring for a real mix of people from very diverse communities, and we're proud to be doing so. There's some information on page 9 about the home care services that we provide. And for those of you perhaps that don't know, as well as supporting family carers with training, counselling, information advice, carers assessments, we also do provide care at home services. So we have our own home care team. And as a charity who supports family carers, we are really keen and dedicated to providing quality home care service, not the rush in 15 minutes, hi, bye, here's your tablets, off we go. We're not about doing that service. So page 9 gives you an idea of just the amount of hours caring that we've been providing and the different types of care that we can provide as well. Another thing I think I wanted to highlight to you. Okay, so on page 17, every year we do an annual satisfaction survey. So we send out to all of you, either by post or by email, or you might be asked to complete it when you come into the centre. Our funders like us to ask you what you think about our service, what services you've used, and also has it been of any use to you whatsoever. So every year we send out a survey, we ask for your feedback. And on page 17, you can see the responses that we've received. We always want to hear your feedback, the good, bad, and the ugly, because it is important to us. That's how we change and adapt what we do. That's how we make sure that what we're providing is of use to you. Now, we can't always do everything that people request, because we do also have to think about perhaps the cost of providing that service or activity, and whether there will be enough people to make it viable for us to provide it. We have to also think about what else is out there in our community, so that we're not just duplicating what is already available in the community. Okay, so that just gives you an idea really of how important your communication is to us. And so it's never a waste of time when we ask you for feedback, because we do take it on board. And on that note, before you leave today, I would really like to encourage you to complete the evaluation form. We have some paper copies, so you'll be able to fill that in, pen and paper if you'd like to. We also have some tablets so that our staff will help you to complete the evaluation form and do that on an electronic tablet, electronic device. Okay, so please do tell us what you think of today, what you think about the lunch, what you think about the venue, what you think about the train passing every 2 minutes so you can't actually hear what I'm saying. All of that we need to hear. We need to hear what you feel, and also tell us what else you would like the centre to have perhaps covered. Perhaps not today, because today is really all about carers' rights, but at our other activities and events. Okay, and I think that's it really for me. I'm going to hand over to Neil now to take you through our annual accounts.
Thanks, Pam. Afternoon, everybody. Now, to contrast with the colourful impact report, we've got a rather less colourful set of annual accounts, but we don't need to look at those. So don't worry if you haven't got a copy. We are, as you know, we are a charity. We're regulated by an organisation called the Charity Commission, which decides what our accounts look like. So we don't really have a choice. We have 10 months from the end of the year. So 10 months from the end of our year is 31st of March, as Pam said. So we have until the 31st of January to file these. So when we come to resolutions at the end, the resolution, if you decide to adopt these, will enable us to file these accounts and get them to the Charity Commission on time. So I've got 4 slides, I think, in colour. So this is about what we do with our money we receive, where we spend it, and then what we've got left at the end. So the top line is our total income. So this year we've received about £1.5 million. We'll have a look at a slide in a minute that shows where that's come from. And we've spent it all. It's good news, because there's no point keeping hold of money, because the idea is we receive money to spend it, but it's support carers. So we have a small surplus for the year, which is that number of 40,295. So that's kind of all good news. I'll show you in a minute how we spend that. But only think, well, but are we in a good financial position? At the bottom, it shows that we have in our assets to spend in the future, we have £1 million in the bank still. So that's good. So that's money we can spend on future services, which will go alongside money we receive from the council and elsewhere to continue to provide the services that we provide. So that you can see broadly the same as we had last year. So last year we had 1,015,000. The end of the year, this time we've got 1,003,000. So we're kind of pretty much, we spent what we got and we're in the same position at the end of the year. So that's good. We don't want to be generating a whole bunch of extra money. We should spend all we receive, because we're receiving it in order to spend it on supporting care. So don't worry that we're not making a big profit. We're not about making a profit. We're about spending the money we receive well and sensibly to provide these services. Are we all with me so far? Great. Okay, let's see what next. Oh, okay, right, this slide. So you remember we had £1.5 million of income, more or less. So this is showing where our money has come from. So in purple on your right hand side is the money received from Enfield Council. So that's basically for our carers service. In the attractive pink, I think, on my side, is the money received from providing the home care services, which Pam was describing. And then a little bit, the kind of bit that's sandwiched between them, we've got something called other grants, EPIC, and other. So the one I want to talk to you about briefly, which you wouldn't have had last year, is EPIC. And that is the money we receive from the big lottery Reaching Communities to support young carers. So in the year, that was about £100,000, and that will go on over 2 or 3 years for us to continue to be able to do that. So that's broadly where our income, so you can see, is roughly half and half between what we get from home care and what we get from London Borough of Enfield. That's money in. So now let's see where we spend it. So we've got two slides here. First one is what type of activity do we spend it on? So we spend, you can see we spend it, almost all of it, either on providing the home care services or on providing unpaid care support services. And just a little bit at the top in that kind of light pink, I think, isn't it? That is about the kind of central support costs just to keep everything running. So almost everything we spend is spent on either unpaid carer support or home care services. So we've not got some big overheads that are kind of take all the money up. We're spending it on all of them we should. So what type of things are we spending it on? So as you might imagine, the main thing we're spending on is people, so staff costs. So what would you say that is? That's well more than 3/4, isn't it? So it's probably like 80% maybe. I get my protractor out in old school days. That would be on staff costs, which would be both the team in the centre and our support workers who are providing home care. And as you might imagine, we've got some other costs that are around phone costs, computers, the centre in Enfield, and other just office running costs. But again, our job, and Pam's job, I suppose, is to try and make that part of it as small as possible. So we're doing as much as we can in employing people to do the support work, much like as on the other side, we don't need to do it, don't worry, is we need to keep that support bit as small as possible. So all the money we're spending is either directly on home care or directly on carer support. So whenever we look at this year on year, this bit at the top in the kind of top left-hand corner on these pie charts should be as small as possible, because the rest of it is on helping you ladies and gentlemen and the other 7,500 and more carers throughout Enfield. So I've managed to make 3 pictures the equivalent of 50 pages. So that's quite good. So we don't need to read. You can read 50 pages if you want to. And I'm being a little bit flippant, but accounts are not everyone's cup of tea, are they? But they are clearly available for anybody who wants to look at them. If anyone has any questions, I'm very happy to answer those questions. But they're driven by what our regulator, which is the Charity Commission, tells us we have to file with them in order that we remain a charity. So we've then got to So there are 2 things to help me we need to agree on. Okay. So first thing, you don't have to agree, but I'd like you to agree. So I'm not forcing you to agree. The first thing I'd like you to agree is that these accounts are adopted by members so that we can file them at the Charity Commission and meet our deadline. So why would you do that? So let me think, if I was you, why do you want to do that? And the main reason you want to do that is they've been prepared carefully by the team at the centre, and they've been audited by a company called Brian Paul Enfield Company that have been through these and have got an audit certificate on them to say these accounts are true and fair. So it's not me just telling you. We've had them independently checked as well to say that they are the true accounts for the centre. So we're now back to those of you who are members. So we would need to for a member to both propose and second the adoption of these accounts so that we can file them with the Charity Commission. So is anybody inclined, a new person maybe, your chance for fame, can appear in the minutes? Anybody want to be famous? Oh yes, hello. And your name? Claude.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claudia. So you're going to.
Claudia, I'm not sure you're a member.
Cool. Okay,
Okay.
so you're going
And
to.
You're a member, and I know that Cleo, if Cleo is still here, Cleo is a member,
Okay,
and obviously trustees. So
okay, thank you very much. Now, second thing,
Cleo is. Thank
Okay.
you, Cleo.
so second thing we need to do is.
So Cleo Campbell proposed, and we need someone to second. Patience? Patience to second.
Right, second chance for claim for fame. Get ready. So one of the things that so we have auditors checking, yeah? So it would make sense that the people who are being checked aren't the ones that appoint the auditors. It would make sense that someone independent, like a member, would propose the auditor, wouldn't it? Because the members are supposed to be checking us. So we have a company called Brian Paul, who are auditors, who did it's an Enfield company, so that's good. And it's a good company, did a good job. So we would like somebody or two people to propose and second the reappointment of Brian Paul as auditors for next year to be our auditors. So is anybody feeling the urge to put the hand up? Okay, thank you. Okay,
Sugar Ahmed, Ahmed, thanks. Alpha.
and someone to second.
Tim is seconding.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and lady here, sorry. Thank you.
Is that you, Rakib? Rakib Yusuf, R-A-K, E-B.
Okay. So thank you very much. So hopefully that was moderately entertaining view of the account. So the picture we should go away with is we've got plenty of assets now to help us with the challenges, but we should not be kidding ourselves that we don't have some big challenges, but at least we've got the money to start helping address those challenges. So thank you all very much. And back to
What, any questions? If anyone's got any
questions.
questions.
Okay, who would like to ask me a difficult question on the accounts? Or it could be an easy one. Or it couldn't be on one at all, maybe. Okay, seriously, if you have any questions on the accounts, I'll be around for an hour or so, so please feel free to ask me, and I might not want to ask them in front of everybody else, and I might not be able to answer it in front of everybody else as well. So feel free to ask. There should be no secret about accounts, despite the fact they're in 50 pages. We've been able to explain it in 3 with a few pictures. So that was quite easy, wasn't it? So let's not be scared of the money and the accounts. It's quite easy to understand. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. We're going to move into any other business part of the meeting. And I wanted to take advantage, actually, while I have the microphone, just to explain to people, you did touch on it, Tim, the fact that our contract with Enfield Council is up for renewal. And so it's actually being re-tendered as we speak, and the deadline for people in interested companies to submit a tender bid for our contract. They have to do that before some date in, I think it's the 14th of February 2025. So it's really just to let you all know that we are certainly here. We will certainly be bidding to retain our contract. And we want to continue providing the services that we provide now. We would like to be able to be expanding our services so that we can serve you and the people you care for even more fully. But it's just to let you know that we will certainly be bidding for that new contract. But obviously there will be, I'm sure, other companies, because when things go out to tender, you could potentially, any company could bid to provide the services that we provide. Okay, and just to let you know that there is a growing, there's a growing number of organisations that provide purely online services that have been winning lots of contracts around the country. And I know that they have approached Enfield Council, and so far the council have said that, you know, they're not interested in just providing a solely digital carers service. But on the other hand, when the contract spec was issued, the contract is actually divided into 60% price or cost and 40% quality, which is really disappointing to see, because obviously people can provide a very cheap service, but actually the service isn't worth anything. So be reassured, we are certainly intending to keep our physical centre. We will still have a digital offer. We've always had a digital offer. We have a website, we have phones, you know, we will still have that offer. And we know that as, you know, as time goes by, there will increasingly be people who will access their information, support and advice online, and they'll do that digitally. But there is still a huge number, and certainly the majority of people that are on our database, who are people that are not so used to dealing with online, who want to phone somebody and have the phone answered, who want to be able to speak to somebody and meet someone face to face. And it is still our commitment and will be our commitment in the new bid that we submit to continue providing that service. Thank you. So are there any questions before we bring an end to the AGM? Part of the meeting.
Mr. Chair, before you do, could you formalise apologies for absence?
Can I formalise?
Apologies for absence.
Oh, yes, thank you, Arthur. Sorry, yes, I forgot to say, we did have a number of apologies for absence. So members that couldn't be here today, and one of them certainly was Wendy Berry, who wasn't able to make it to the meeting today. I'm not sure if we do have Anne Campbell online. Can you see if she's online? Because she's certainly going to try to join us from Zoom. Okay, so if we can note her apologies. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Anne. Hannah Lyson, one of the trustees, giving apologies unless she's on Zoom today. Have I missed any of our trustees? I think that's everybody. Henry Keeb, sorry, I think that you are actually a member and I forgot to mention, so apologies and thank you for proposing the account. Okay, so I think that's it. I think that's it. Okay, so we're going to move on then, and we're going to actually invite our first speaker as part of the Carers' Rights event is Leah Markwick. Hopefully she is online. She on Zoom? Lovely. So Leah is the Strategic Commissioning and Service Development Manager for Enfield Council and is going to be joining us digitally. So hopefully the technology works. So we're just going to spotlight Leah's camera. I can see you, Leah. Just a second.
Hello, can you hear me too?
Yeah, there we are. We can see you now. Can we take off?
Wonderful. Hopefully I'm not too large in the room. Lovely. Okay, thank you, Pam and everyone. I shall fire away then. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. But yes, thank you for inviting me to say a few words. I hope you've had a nice lunch and keeping warm up there. So my name's Leah Markwick, for those who I've not met already. And I'm one of the commissioning managers in our Enfield Council Adult Social Care Service. So I've had the pleasure of working with the Enfield Carers Centre in recent years on carers issues. Just a bit about Enfield and carers then. Obviously in Enfield, we know from census data that about 8% of our population provide unpaid care. So most people are likely to know or actually be a carer, an unpaid carer at some point in their lives. We also have a high number of older carers in Enfield, some of whom will be caring for others whilst in need of care themselves. So I just think to say the value of unpaid carers in Enfield is huge. And as a council, we very much remain committed to supporting carers in their caring role in a way that's both personalised and person-centred, and also in a way that's flexible. So the role of Enfield Carers Centre and our wider VCS partners really has been fundamental in terms of supporting and delivering some of these commitments over the last year. So we've made great progress in reaching more carers than ever. I think it was mentioned earlier, but I think we're over 7,500 unpaid carers on our carers register, which really is great. And actually, it's key to helping us target carer services to those who need it. So that's fabulous. As a council, we very much seek to continue this good work in terms of identifying carers going forward and really double down on efforts to reach some of our hidden carers and also carers whose voices are less often heard. So a little bit about our carers ambassador. Our carers ambassadors then. I'm not sure if there are any ambassadors there with you today, but I've had the privilege of working with some of our carers ambassadors over the past year or so. and seeing how some of their work is making a difference to the lives of unpaid carers. So that's been fantastic. Lots of this has involved reaching out into communities through our GP services in hospitals, and very much helping to raise the profile of unpaid carers in Enfield, and identify people who may need support. But also we've seen an impact at a strategic level too. So our Carers Ambassadors have attended our Carers Partnership Board, which is chaired by our Director of Adult Social Care, Doug. And they've really been active in helping to shape policy and some of our strategic priorities that will make a difference to unpaid carers in the longer term. So just a thank you there to our ambassadors. A little bit on feedback from our carers then, and I know you've mentioned the carer survey and collecting information on the views of carers, which has been really important for us as a council. So recent changes in our carer satisfaction levels then seem to reflect the wonderful work that's underway. Our most recent carers survey, we've seen an increase in the proportion of unpaid carers who find it easy to find information about services, so that's great. And we've also seen an increase in the proportion of carers who report that they've been included and consulted in discussions about the people that they care for. So again, brilliant news. So that's it. So I'll end there, I think, by saying a huge thank you to Enfield Carers Centre staff and volunteers for their ongoing engagement, commitment, contributions to support the lives of carers in Enfield over the last year, and very much look forward to continuing this partnership in future years. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Leah. Leah, are you going to be staying around for Luke's presentation and then the question and answers?
Yeah, I can stay till 3 o'clock.
Lovely.
So I'll stay online till 3 if there's any queries. Thank
Lovely.
you.
And we do have 2 carers ambassadors. Hopefully they're still with us. Do we have Rumit and Laurentine? Laurentine's gone? Okay, all right. Laurentine was the person that was helping to serve the food, so can't get better than that, can you? Very well. Thanks
Fantastic.
very much, Leah.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'd like to invite Luke to come forward. Luke Clements.
When you want the next slide, I can show you.
It's gone in.
Yes, yeah. Does that work for you?
I don't know. Yes. Yeah. Okay, I'm just thinking, sorry, I should have had a discreet conversation, but we're having it public. A lot of what I'm saying is quite dry. I'm a lawyer, by the way, everybody, and it's a joy to be here, and I'll explain why. I'm just wondering if we can almost do the questions and discussion first. I don't know. Well, I'll try and, we'll welcome everybody. It's my name's Luke Clements. It's a real pleasure to be here. Enfield Carers is an outstanding organisation, and I work throughout England, Wales, and Scotland. And you come across areas in the United Kingdom which are not well served in terms of support for carers, in terms of independent support for carers. And you come across some areas where it's outstanding. And Enfield, in terms of the carers organisation, what I'm the pleasure of being invited to, is outstanding. And don't imagine that there are many places in England where you would have a collection of this size, a group of this size, at an annual general meeting. So it's great to be here, and may you last for a very long time. So I'm a sort of burnt out legal aid lawyer. I spent 40 years as a solicitor, suing local authorities and health bodies, but only under legal aid, and then legal aid has disappeared largely. So for the last 20 or so years, I've taken refuge in academia, where I've tried to, my centre is funded by a disabled children's charity called Cerebra. So a lot of our work is with disabled children, and particularly their carers and support groups. But I've written extensively on adult carers' rights, and I've been involved in writing some of the earliest Carers Act in 1995, and also recently as advising Parliament on the new legislation. And so I can talk about the legislation, but as I just said in that open discussion with Pamela, it's quite dry, and I'll flick through that but I might flick through it quite quickly. I'd be very interested to have more questions and discussions. I have already been asked a couple of questions, almost impossibly difficult questions, which I've responded to, but I would really like to have a conversation about what matters. I'm going to start by talking about what has come through, what the last government did for carers. And I'm an independent academic, so I can be honest, and they did very little, putting it mildly. And a lot of what the legal changes I'm going to talk about are very interesting, but they're what I would call opiates. They don't really get to the heart of the problem that we have in this country in relation to huge numbers of unpaid carers, living very often in poverty, and sacrificing careers and well-paid or really important community-based work because they have to care for someone who they love dearly, but there will be other ways of squaring that particular circle. So that's me. I'm based at the University of Leeds, and I actually live on the Welsh borders, where I hope to get to today, Great Western permitting. So I've got a website, it's lukeClements.com, and because I've been doing this for such a long time, I get a lot of requests which I can't really handle. So I try to put up lots of information on my website about what to do with commonly occurring problems. And normally those are commonly occurring problems like accessing direct payments, getting adequate direct payments, getting respite care, getting basic supports. And so there's a lot of material there. I've also got, I've produced far too many books over the times. Oh, this handout's going to be made available, isn't it? So this handout will be made available to everybody. I've shared it with Pamela already. And most of those books are freely accessible. So if you go to the publications tab, you'll get all the latest stuff. And if you scroll down, most of those you can just sort of click on, like the carers. I write a book for Carers UK. If you just click on that, you can download that free of charge, and that comes there. We've written a way to solve problems with the council. If you've got a commonly occurring problem with the council, if you've got a problem with the council, it's probably a commonly occurring problem. And we've divided all known problems with councils in social care into 9 categories. And there's a freely available guide on that. It's been downloaded 60,000 times. I've written a recent book And that one's a big beastly book. You don't need to even contemplate buying. But it's the one the judges use and your local authority will use. So I've been asked to look at new developments, and I'll flick through that quite quickly because I think they're opiates. They've, you know, the government can say we passed these laws, but actually I think they signify very little indeed. No, I mean, I don't want to put a downer on that, but in my humble opinion, they are. I then quickly whistle through the basics on carers, and then hopefully it'll be more interesting to have a discussion. And I'd like lots of questions, easy questions, particularly. So we've got some new acts that have been passed. And generally an act is passed and then a year or two waits before it actually comes into force. So the Health and Care Act has come into force, and that just sort of it does what you would imagine always was going to be the case, that if you're going to change any radical problem, if the NHS England is the organisation that in a way is the mistress organisation for running all the health bodies, now called integrated care boards in England. What this act says is if they're going to change everything, they should at least consult with carers. Well, one would have hoped that that was always the case, but we've now got a bit of law that says they've got to do that. I mean, it's as if you could change everything without consulting with carers. Carers are the elastic that keeps the whole social care system running in this country. 95% of care in this country is provided by carers, and they have been stretched and stretched and stretched as the cutbacks to social care happen. And it, you know, I think they're a breaking point. You are a breaking point. And so the idea that it's a novelty to consult with carers if there's a big strategic change strikes me as fairly problematical. And there's also, I mean, problematical in the sense that it should always have happened. And if your local integrated care board, that's the local authority, but effectively the board that runs not local authority services, but the NHS services. If they want to do anything significant, that they must also consult. Well, that's going to be useful, I suppose, if they don't, but one would hope they always will. I'm sure they would. We get this more and more issues about carers' leave. Every year, 3 million carers at least give up work to care. So this government is saying we've got to get everybody back to work, and they're focusing on disabled people, but they're not looking at carers, who are people that would often like to have stayed in work, in their careers, in their jobs, would have paid tax, would have been hugely important. 3 million workers for the UK. Think of the gross domestic product that is. They give up work. And instead of having real financial incentives, real money, what we get are lots and lots of programs that says carers can take leave, they can do this, they can do that, but it's always unpaid leave. And that's the issue. Until the government puts its hand in its pocket and puts real money into this, which would come straight back through taxes, through VAT, through increased domestic product, we're going to have huge problems. But we've just got tinkering on this. We've got a Carers Leave Act, which is a private member's bill. It came to force earlier this year. It gives carers the right to seek unpaid leave in order to arrange care for dependents. And it's basically focused on disabled people. And it doesn't have to be a family member, and the employee can seek this leave from the first day of their employment. They don't have a qualifying period. And they allowed 1 week effectively every 12 weeks. And sorry, one week every 12 months, sorry. And that doesn't have to be taken as a full week. It could be half a day or a day, as goes. Obviously, parents of disabled children have got so significantly more rights, and that's an existing piece of legislation. We have an employment relations flexible working. Again, this idea that carers can ask to go part-time, or they can ask to vary their hours, come in earlier and come, leave earlier, or vice versa. That's always been, well, that's been the law since 2014. It's just been extended to say that you can ask for that from the moment you join as an employee. You don't have to have a qualifying period of 26 weeks. And you can make 2 requests now, not 1, for flexible working. It's up to the employer to say whether she or he will agree to you working flexibly. And many people just don't ask. And there's quite a lot of research on that. It's not been very effective. You've got a question? They could turn it down, yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is sort of a big deal, right? They can turn it down. The law says that they have to give reasons. And the answer is, well, what happens if their reasons are irrational or unreasonable? Are you going to go to an employment tribunal of that? These are sort of opiates. These are pretend. These are the research shows that very few people are asking for these things. Decent businesses, would do it, and always did do it, and those more oppressive industries, people who wouldn't ask. I don't want to be a downer on this. I should say hallelujah, this is great. But I think that we need a radicalism in carers' rights. I'm always encouraging carers to sort of try and throw themselves under the king's horse in a way. I've never volunteered to do that myself. But there is this pitiful responses. They are useful, they're interesting, they go in my new book sort of thing, but does it add up to a lot? We're seeing some interesting increases in equality and human rights. Carers UK has long argued that carers should become the 10th category that's protected. As you know, you have protected statuses under the Equality Act: sex, race, disability, sexual orientation, age, and things like that, religion. And carers are not one of the protected groups. Now, there's quite a lot of debate about whether that would radically change anything, but it's a very powerful argument because, of course, carers are one of the most disadvantaged groups in the UK and the world, particularly the world, and largely because caring is gendered. I know that lots of men do caring, but the reason caring is unpaid is because it's traditionally thought of as women's work. So it's gendered in that respect. And globally, there's a lot of argument about caring being a fundamental poverty issue. There was a landmark case in 2008 where the European Court of Justice, when we were in the EU, ruled that a carer could claim to be discriminated on the grounds of disability, although she wasn't disabled. So Sharon Coleman was working in a solicitor's office. They treated her brutally, largely because she kept taking off time to care for her profoundly disabled son, Oliver. And sometimes she would have to do that without notice. He would be in hospital with breathing difficulties. And she got really some horrible things said. So she felt she had to leave. And then she claimed that she had been unfairly dismissed because of disability. Now, under the UK law at that time, disability had to be the disability of the person who was the victim. But under the European Union legislation, it could be just the ground. And so what she said was, I have been sacked because not I'm a disabled person, but I have been sacked because I am caring for a disabled person. So I lost my job for a disability related reason. And the European Court of Justice agreed with that. And the UK then enacted new legislation in 2010, the Equality Act, which brought that back into domestic law. So it's part of domestic law that what we call associative discrimination, I'm going to flick through this quickly, is discrimination. That's right, sorry, that's the same noise as my phone makes, but I don't think it is mine. So the sort of examples that the Equality and Human Rights Commission give is where a mother, a pup says you can, to the mother, you can come in with your child who's got, let's say, cerebral palsy, but you'll have to go into the garden or the family room. That's discrimination against both of them, but it's against the mother as well. It's associated with her son. There's been a recent development in that for nerds, such as me. It's a really interesting decision, which is giving it more teeth. But very few people go to the employment tribunal on these things. So this is a sort of minority interest. She was working for the Nationwide Building Society, and she was working from home because she had a profoundly disabled daughter, I think it was. I know she cared for her mother, her disabled mother, her elderly mother. And the Nationwide decided that it wanted its staff to go back in to the office because it was good for supervision. Some of the new staff were feeling they weren't properly sort of mentored and that sort of stuff. So they decided that they would prioritize for redundancy people that worked at home. And she claimed that she was working at home for a disability or an age-related condition, and that therefore this was discriminatory. And she won. That actually whoopsie, I'm going the wrong way. That actually breaks quite new ground, and that's quite an important decision. She was dismissed. Her argument was that it wasn't actually rational to say that she was needed to work in. The employer had a reasonable ground for having this policy, but and so you can justify discrimination if you've got a reasonable ground. But what she was able to say is that actually she could do all of that equally well at home, and therefore this was, in her case, discriminatory. Oh, have I?
Sorry, no, we've lost it.
It's me, is it?
No, it's us.
Oh, is it? Oh, I suppose it doesn't really matter, does it? Has it gone off now? Shall I? That's really what I wanted to talk on there. There has been an incredibly important UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Rights, a decision of the committee in Geneva called Bellini, which you'll see there. And that is breaking new human rights ground. She was the care, it's an Italian case. She was caring for her profoundly disabled daughter and her partner, who was a disabled man. And she was also a home worker. And for reasons of we don't need to go into, she effectively lost her job because, it was another business that was saying we want people to work in the office. And she was basically rendered destitute. This is a perfect opportunity for me to start having questions, which is what I want. So she was rendered without a job, and she was the main wage earner for that household, and they were left destitute. And what's very interesting is the UN Convention is on the rights of disabled people. And the word carer isn't mentioned at all. But what the committee said in its decision, and this is a convention the UK signed, and you can make personal complaints to the committee in Geneva. What the committee said is that if you don't ensure that the carers have adequate financial support, you are violating not only their rights, but also the rights of the people for whom they care. And that's quite a big decision. Although the Italian system is extremely austere, and not, I mean, I wouldn't use the word generous for the UK, but the UK looks better. You know, what we're seeing is many carers organisations being asked for food bank, food parcels. We're seeing, you know, the carers organisations I'm dealing with, they're saying, we just can't believe it, that this year, we're not being asked about food, short breaks or direct payments, we're asking for food parcels. You know, we are seeing a situation where we are driving carers into severe poverty. Many disabled parents, disabled children are saying that they're not, you know, really eating properly because of the financial difficulties they're in. So these decisions of international courts and committees do resonate, I think, even in the UK, as it sort of seems to withdraw from having a sort of civilized social welfare system. Now, we've lost that, have we?
We have.
Good.
Hang on. Sorry. You should be able to keep talking.
I'll keep
Carry on.
talking.
Yeah.
Can we have some? I mean, I can go back to this theme, and we can talk about the basics. The basic things that you have to understand, I think, if you're here in the UK, is that we abolished the duty on families to care on the 5th of July 1948. We are one of the few countries in the world that doesn't oblige family members to care for other family members. There is no duty on family members to care for other families. There's a duty to financially support your spouse, and as duty to provide care, which I say does exist in much of the world. That isn't a duty on family members to care. It's a duty on women, because they're the ones that take up the vast majority of caring, the heavy end caring. So it's hugely divisive and unequal. And we, to our credit, got rid of it when the National Assistance Act came into force in the 5th of July 1948. Carers. And those resources are, you know, many carers give up care because the services that would be put in to support their loved one are just totally inadequate. They don't have faith that those would treat them with dignity and with the skills that they require, the knowledge that they've acquired. And so, although we have law in good shape, by and large, we don't have those sort of compensatory mechanisms. The money problem is with the treasury.
Sorry. Ariane, do you have the presentation? Can you
email it to me?
Can you just
If she shows it on there, then
I've got it
we
somewhere.
can link
Yeah.
that up.
That's fine. She can just share it on Zoom.
Do you need an adapter for that? Or?
It's not that. It's
No.
just the presentation isn't being shared. So
Any question? Any points? Can somebody pick me up and Thank you. Challenge me. Hi.
It's been so long since we got this legislation to give carers recognition for some extra leave. Do you think the government will ever go further enough to make it paid leave for carers?
No, I don't. I should say that I'm nearly always wrong on most things. That's probably why I gave up litigation. The government, you see, if the government was to make leave paid, the question is who would pay that? Would the employer pay that and reclaim it? Or would the government pay directly? Now, in Europe, most of Western Europe, the government pays these expenses directly. In the UK, it's always been that the employer pays these and can reclaim some, but not all of that cost. Given what the government's recently done to employers in terms of national insurance, I think it's very unlikely the government's going to put an additional burden on employers, even if they can reclaim it. It's an administrative burden. So I can't see that happening, and I can't see that giving paid leave is going to solve the problem of people giving up careers that they want, they value, they love, that is socially and emotionally satisfying as well as economically, to provide care. And people do that, I think, because they are not satisfied with the services that are available if they don't do it. And therefore, I think, I mean, it's chicken and egg, but I think if you've got to have really good services, and so I suppose that the government would be better put money into the social care system rather than compensating people for giving up work, who economically, it's not good for the UK to have so many people giving up work, who we've trained, been through college, been through university, whatever, and then suddenly, you know, they give it up. Any other comments? Yes. Fine.
Sorry, I don't know if I should be asking this here. It's about being a parent carer.
Yeah.
And as you say, you have to give up work to look after your children who can't attend school, so they're at home. But social care say they cannot support you as a carer or the children because those hours are educational hours. Is there such a thing in law that they cannot support you between 9 and 3 because they are educational hours, and education should be supporting you or your child?
Well, it's the same authority, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
But this is what happens. We just get bounced between
yeah, it's not us, it's them.
departments.
Yeah, in our problem-solving guide, we use an example where they say it's not us, it's education.
Yes.
It's not us, it's the NHS.
Yes, exactly.
And so each of these commonly occurring problems, we have different solutions. And that one, we suggest you either buy my big horrible book and work it out who is responsible, or you move to Belgium, and then you'll find that it's exactly the same, or you just sue them both and say it's not. I can't work it out, but one of you has got to do it, and you're the same authority. Just sort it out. I mean, you don't sue them, you complain, because so. No, I don't know that. I mean, the local authority can give you support, one must give you support for your social care needs. If it is education, yes, it is part of the education obligation. But they're the same authority. So they've just got to sort it out. Yeah. Our research at the moment, so we've done research on a lot of work on parent blame. And of course, parent blame doesn't end when you get your child gets to 18. So the first default position for anybody that's asking for help is, well, you can't cope, you need to go on a parenting course. And then when you've been on that, you need to go on another one. Oh, that's great. What we're doing at the moment, which I mean, I'm sort of straying off at the moment, but what we're looking at now is, and it really hopefully is relevant to a lot of you, is every local authority, and I don't know if Enfield is, but we will know, is developing what they call trauma-informed practices. So every local authority is saying we're trauma-informed. We know that a lot of people coming to our services have had traumatic experiences, childhood abuse, mental health problems, domestic violence, and so on. And we are telling our social workers and our staff, our school staff, our health staff and everybody that they've got to realise that many people have had traumatic experiences and therefore they've got to respond appropriately. And that's very welcome. But our research shows that for very many people dealing with health, social services, housing, and education, the most traumatizing experience they have is dealing with health, social services, that they are traumatized by the system, by being blamed, by being told by health services, you're fabricating this. I was doing some work with some housing groups recently, people who had experienced homelessness, you know, rough sleeping. And, you know, almost every one of them said the most traumatic thing about rough sleeping is dealing with the housing department. You know, I found it extraordinary. I'm not a housing expert, but I think that, you know, that's the problem with homeschooling because the school's inadequate. So we have a system that is traumatizing, that's not responding to the real issues. And the real issues is lack of support, actually. Okay.
Back.
All right, I'll behave now. Have you got that little widget?
It's still in.
Oh, it's in here, is it?
Yeah, it's in here. Your
Oh, that's working, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. All right. Oh, okay. So I'll go back on message, and if we with three, we've got some time for some more questions. I'll rattle through this. Whoopsie. So with the start again, well-being principle. So this is what the law says, and what I'm really saying is I think the law is in quite good shape. This is in the Care Act that came that is 2014 and came into force in 2015. I was the expert advisor on this, and therefore it's a brilliant piece of legislation. But it is good, and it just shows you how the law changes nothing. It's got to be implemented. You know, once Parliament's passed this act, they just sort of slap themselves on the back and they go off. But in fact, that's the beginning, not the end of the process. And the Act talks about the primary obligation on social services, authorities, children, in relation to parent carers, children's services as well, is to promote well-being. And that's really quite an important, this point, these are general principles, they are important. Because the Care Act is the first act in the world that gives carers exactly the same rights to support as disabled people. So it was a landmark piece of legislation for carers. It hasn't actually, I think the position of carers has gone backwards very significantly since then, but in terms of rights, if you know your rights, it's a very, very important piece of legislation. I, as a carer, have a right. Your obligation, primary obligation, is to promote my well-being. And my well-being includes a couple of lists. This is the first list. And of two of those, I would sort of pick out, these apply to disabled people and carers. The two I pick out is control over day-to-day life. I think that's very important for disabled people. Increasingly, particularly with things like direct payments, they're being very, very restricted in what you can do and can't do with your direct payment. They become monsters in a way, direct payments. But the second one is so important. It's the right to work, to attend education, training, and leisure activities on exactly the same basis. When it was enacted, the minister said carers should have a right to go to aerobics in the evening. I don't know why I always remember that, but I do. So you do not have to care. You have a right to the same sort of opportunities in terms of work, remaining in work, returning to work, attending college, training, leisure activities. And that's very powerful. And then there's another list. The reason I highlight in yellow individual, because in the Act, an individual is either a disabled person or a carer. And the reason that that's important, I think, is the first one. Because what it's saying is that the assumption is when you are dealing with the council, not that they know best, but that you know best. It's very like the Mental Capacity Act. It says that everybody 16 or over is assumed to have capacity to make decisions. So if you want to say this person lacks capacity to make a decision, you've got to point to a specific piece of information about that individual to show that they don't know what they're doing. And in this situation, what the Act is saying is if you want to disagree, if you, the public body, want to disagree with a carer over what's best, or a disabled person what's best for them, then you've got to have some specific information to rebut the presumption that they are actually the best place to do that. There's a piece of law going through at the moment, or there's a law reform process on social care for disabled children. And what we're saying is there must be the same principle in that the default position for anything to do with children is that the parents know the child best. It's not at the moment. But if they, but that would be just so important, because of course parents do know their children best. That must be the starting point. It's not at the moment. So as I've already said, there is no duty to provide care in the UK. Section 1 of the National Assistance Act abolished the poor law with workhouses and that. It was an extraordinary government in the Attlee government. And it swept away that. It also brought in the NHS and some other extraordinary things. But Section 1 of the National Assistance Act is one of the most frisson-making pieces of legislation. Section 1 just says the poor law is abolished. And we have this new system. The poor law had this principle that families had to care. And that was swept away. And still, what is that? 80 years later, we're still in that same mindset that it's the family's responsibility. Well, disability is if you believe in the social model, it's created by society. The barriers are socially driven barriers. It's not a family problem. Looking after your children is a family issue. But if you have a disabled child, then that extra work is something that's caused because the society is not responsive. The schools aren't inclusive. The administrative barriers are enormous. And the legislation says that the Care Act says you mustn't assume a carer is willing or able to provide or continue to provide care. And you must discuss with the carer whether they want to return to work, stay in work, go through education, training and recreation. So it's a very good piece of legislation. In practice, it can be very difficult, I think, for carers to say, I don't want to care, because you're thought as heartless and, uncaring and unfit. And so what I say when we're in those situations is, the legislation talks about, you mustn't assume that carers are willing and able to care, to provide care. And I think that the way perhaps carers can respond to that question, are you willing? Is to say, well, let's just park willing for a moment. It's a very interesting concept that we'll look at philosophy about. If you don't provide me with help, I'm just simply not going to be able to do this. This is an ability thing, you know, I cannot cope. I'm on a cliff edge. I'm nearly there. I can't cope. And I won't be able to cope. You know, willing, the spirit may be there, but the body is not able. So just get out of that sort of game. Can you win? As I say, this PowerPoint handout will be shared. And there's some recently quite good ombudsman's decisions on councils that basically, and it say, well, yeah, you know, this is terribly difficult. This is very difficult. We're going to sort it out. And then they don't. And the ombudsman is, I'm very critical of the ombudsman, but occasionally they come up with some good stuff. And one of the issues is that councils will say sometimes, what is it? You know, there's nothing really dramatic here. And what the ombudsman is saying is, it's the cumulative impact of small things that make it impossible. It's not one, it's not this, it's not that. Put them together, it's making it absolutely impossible. And so that was really welcome. So there's a duty to assess carers and a duty to meet needs. But all too often carers assessments are just tick boxes. We've sent you a form, fill it out, particularly parent-carer needs assessments. They're just done. And I was really struck with what Pamela was saying about face-to-face. You know, what would it be like if this was all done online today? I mean, you know, it's just, you know, we've got to get back to that huge importance of face-to-face and the quality that comes with that and the accountability that comes with that. And I think it's 75% of all the information most people take in is visual. So being in somebody's home, being in their environment, being there, using all your senses, but particularly visual. You just gather so much more information from face-to-face and from the intonation and the way people look at you. And that's what a proper carers assessment is all about. Do you do carers assessments
so
here?
we provide a statutory carers assessment standalone.
Yeah.
So for people caring for an adult.
Yeah.
We've actually got a presentation about that afterwards, about getting the best from your carers assessment.
Yeah, well, God bless you. I mean, you know, that's quality, isn't it? That's not just done for target purposes. Yeah. And assessing is a really difficult word. Assessing is something that's done in all sorts of branches of the social welfare system. The way, what an assessment is, and it's simply this, and it's true in education, it's true in all other areas, is simply to ask the question, what if? What if we, the state, I'm the doctor, I'm the social worker, I'm the nurse, I'm the actually police officer sometimes, or the legal aid lawyer. What will happen if we don't put our hand in our pocket and give this family some resources? That's all an assessment's about. What will happen if we don't do that in the short term, the medium term, the long term? And the greater the consequences appear, the more compelling, the more difficult it will be for the state to say no. So when you're being assessed, when somebody is being assessed, what you really need to do in preparation for that is to have a lot of letters from family members, friends, neighbours, pillars of the community and non-pillars of the community, people that know the disabled person and the carer, to say, if this isn't, and specify what is needed, happen, these things will happen. They will lose their job, they will lose their sanity, basically, or whatever. And particularly with young care, with disabled children, I think it's often overlooked. The siblings are overlooked. Did you say you got a young carers talk?
Not talk today.
Oh, good,
Very young
good.
carer service with them.
Okay, I've got a problem with young carers. There is law reform, and I would, and I'm normally wrong, so sort of tick me off. But I think that we ought to get back to talking about siblings, children. And I don't think, in many situations where we're dealing with parents of disabled children, and you've got a child that has really got substantial needs and is dominating everything. That dominant impact casts a shadow on the other children because they don't have the attention, they don't have the time, things like that. And I don't think it matters whether they're caring or not, to be honest. I think it's saying, look at the impact on the family, on the siblings. This one isn't necessarily caring, but she's actually beginning to have mental health problems. And at the moment, we have to label people as young carers, and if you're not a young carer, you're not in the game. The siblings don't go looking. So I'm suggesting that they change that.
We can accommodate siblings as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but often they're the ones that the unforeseen consequences happen for. Anyway, the what if question is not just the individual, but the family group, the whole family. And that's all really an assessment should be about. And you'll get this slide. And the carers assessment and the disabled persons assessment can be done at the same time, and often are, although the legislation says that if either of them doesn't want it, then it could be separate. But out of it should come two different documents. One, the disabled person, and one, a care plan for the carer. You may have the situation of a carer who is saying, I've just got to go back to work for my emotional and social well-being, but also financially, we cannot pay the bills. Or I just need a break because I haven't had a break for years. So the assessment will say, well, the carer needs a break. So that's recorded on their needs. That's in their care plan. She needs a break to work, to have a bit of leisure. She doesn't have to do it. So it could be to go gambling, as far as I'm concerned. And then the disabled person is then assessed for the additional support they will need so that the carer can have the break. And the additional support is put on their care plan, a sitting service, a personal assistant, or whatever. So you have two different plans, and the carer should be given one, but they should meet those outcomes.
I think it's 10 to 3.
Right. So am I supposed to stop now for questions?
Yeah, in the nicest possible way.
Yeah? Should we do discussion? It would be really good. Oh, great. Yeah. Thank you. Is that right?
Yeah.
Good.
Hello. Thank you for this wide-ranging talk. Could you say something about the implications for carers of the assisted dying bill, where you might have a parent, yes, your aging parent, has been given 6 months to live for a physical condition. On the other hand, you might have someone you're caring for who is very depressed and who says they want to end it all, but of course they haven't got a date of termination. So, but now that the law's been passed, that might or might not be relevant to someone who is very, very depressed. Anyway, to hear from you.
I'm sort of old enough to know when questions are best avoided. So I'm really not going to go into that in very much detail, if you don't mind. I know it's such a hugely controversial issue. I have published a book on the right to die with both sides of it. I think that the wider issue is not that. The wider issue is, again, it's looking a bit like young carers, because we've got the issue of bereaved carers, because carers have all these wonderful rights. But the moment the person they're looking after dies, then they are on their own. There's nothing there in the legislation. The legislation, they stop being a legal subject. And that would, of course, be an issue with assisted dying as well. So you have lots of people that, you know, I mean, I do quite a lot of work with children with short lives, profoundly disabled children whose mothers are really basically 24/7 caring for them because the NHS is not, and have given up nursing jobs or consultants jobs or all sorts of jobs. And they're absolutely exhausted and that's all. And then the child dies. And they cease to exist legally. There's no rights for a bereaved carer. And there's no support for them to try to get back into the work that they were in before. So it's, in a way, it will be the same issue with the assisted dying bill if it ever becomes law. And again, it's this problem about labelling. You know, you are a carer, therefore you have rights. You're an ex-carer, so you have no rights. But thanks for the question. I just, yeah.
Hi, I want to ask about carers' rights to respite. I'm from a small community group for people who are carers of adults with learning disabilities and complex needs. And what we're finding is that people are given direct payments, but they actually can't find a service to care for somebody with complex needs to have a break. And many of our members actually haven't had an overnight break until since the pandemic. And it just feels that the local authority has washed its hands of their obligation to these families, and yet they have the right to that respite. So what can they do legally? What is their legal right to get help to get that respite, which there is a budget for, but they simply can't find an appropriate service?
Yes, I will. Yeah, I'll repeat that question. So the question is, what happens if you're a carer? You've got an assessment, and the assessment says you have a right to a break, and the local authority says, here's a direct payment, or we'll, you know, it's your problem, we'll give you a direct payment, you sort it out. But there is nothing that you can buy with that because there is no service available. There's a supply side failure, which is true in the whole of England. There is, and the local authority says we've got a budget and it's there, but of course you can't spend it because there is nobody suitable to provide that respite care. And they'll give you the money, and then they'll start asking for it back. And so we're faced with a lot of carers, particularly during COVID, they're being asked for sort of £20,000 back, who have had no break at all, who are sort of, but because it wasn't spent that week or that month on this, it's got to be turned back. So on my website, I've got quite a lot about families who are experiencing repayment claims.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There's a supplemental, and then
Just a follow up to that then. If the carer can't find a service to spend the direct payment on, could they push that back to the local authority and ask them to commission a respite service for them?
Yeah, sure. Once, just deal with that, and then I think direct payments are becoming a monster because it's the state transferring risk to the family. Basically, it's your problem. You've got to find the service. It doesn't exist. the Care Act actually says, and the legislation assumes, that the local authority will manage the market. They will provide this, but that hasn't worked. And of course, I think in a lot, you don't have, nobody has to have a direct payment. They have to agree to a direct payment. The default position is the local authority will commission services. So in those situations, I think, yes, to say to the local authority, you've identified the need, you provide it. And the law says they must provide it. There's a very famous case concerning Islington ex parte Rixon 1998. I'll share it with you, where that exactly happened. Islington said, well, we just don't have the service. And the court said, well, you're just going to go out and have to commission them. Do you want Leo to come in? Yeah.
Sorry, if we could just spotlight Leah, and then perhaps we can ask her the question and ask if she could kindly take the question back to her colleagues at Adult Social Care. Hi, Leah.
Oh, that's better. I wasn't able to unmute. Yes, thank you for your question. I absolutely can take it back. Obviously, as a council in our commissioning functions, we have a role in terms of market facilitation. So I'm very happy to take that question back and speak with kind of commissioning and brokerage colleagues about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
This is another one with regards to direct payments. My son is funded through Kent. Now, through circumstances we don't need to go into, he is now living in the Enfield area. Now, the difference in the amount of money that's paid per carer in Kent is considerably less than what it is in Enfield. Is there some manipulation where we can get Kent to pay the relevant rate, because carers won't work for the hourly rates that are offered in Kent when they're living in Enfield?
Yeah, the law says the direct payment must be adequate to meet the assessed need. So there's no fix. The rates of direct payments are not chiseled in tablets of stone. The direct payment rates have got to be adequate to meet the assessed needs. So if you have a young person with particularly challenged behaviour and learning disabilities, and they need somebody with particular skills to deal with that, then the rate's going to be higher because they might have applied behavioural analysis skills. Sometimes you have a situation where the disabled person hates change, so they don't want a different person coming each week. Well, you're going to have to pay more for that, because as soon as most care personal assistants go and work in Waitrose or something when the job comes. So each direct payment must be individually crafted, and the rate should change according to the assessed need.
But we've been told categorically by Kent that is the rate, and that is the rate they're going to pay. Now this guy is 7 foot tall, he's 30 stone, he's got 17 feet, severely autistic. I carry the scales.
Yeah, sure. So I often used to say, well, get it in writing. And then the family say, well, we have got it in writing. You see, no local authority can say that. They can say it, but they shouldn't put it in writing, because what they're doing is what's called fettering a discretion. It's a really good phrase. It's in that book on problem solving I showed you earlier. Parliament said that the direct payment must be adequate to meet the assessed need. And local authorities can have guideline figures that saying in general we think £14 an hour or something is reasonable. But they can't have rigid rates because Parliament didn't allow them to do that. So they're fettering a discretion that Parliament gave them.
So could I just ask?
So if they put that in writing, you've got them.
So my solution to that is to tell them that they have to put in writing what their maximum amount is that they're prepared to pay.
Well, in our problem solving guidebook, which you should download, at the back, we've got a letter because it's good to capture this stuff in writing. So we've got precedent letters at the back, and one of the letters starts, "Dear," let's pick on Kent. So, "Dear Kent County Council, I had a conversation with your colleague, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones, the other day at 3 p.m. on Friday. And during that conversation, it was said that we have a fixed rate at this rate, and that is it." And then the letter says, "I may have misunderstood, I may have misheard what Mr. Jones said. But unless I have a letter from you or an email from you within 3 days saying that's not your policy, I will take it that it is your policy and therefore constitutes flattering of discretion, and I'm going to make a formal complaint." You could sue. It's the most basic of mistakes that public bodies do, is to have rigid policies where Parliament doesn't allow it. So to download the problem-solving guide and just Google "fettering of discretion." It's such a lovely phrase.
Please, I need you to just advise me on what to do on this. I've got 2 questions actually. The first one is the OT came over to our property and then advised that there should be an access to the garden for my child.
Yeah.
Because of he wouldn't sleep and he needs to burn his energy.
Yes.
Now, it took the Housing Association like a year to respond to that. And when they did, they said they wouldn't do it because of complexity. I did ask complexity in what context, they never said. The second thing was the OT came and said he should have a shower, overhead shower by the bath. They advised to have a wet room, but because my son loves to have his bubble bath, we had to like, okay, let's have that. And no response. I really do not know where to go to just how to move forward about this. And I spoke with the Enfield team and they said, look, we are happy to help them with grants if they're going to do this. Still, they said no.
Okay. Right. Well, you know that that's wrong. And it's just a question of trying to sort of use legal language, I suppose, to do that. So the first thing I'd say is discrimination. They're refusing an adaptation for a disabled young person. So I use the word discrimination. I'd say I have been advised by Professor Clements that this engages the Equality Act 2010. It's a lovely phrase. It engages it. Most people that get a letter like that freeze because the Equality Act is 256 pages long and it's really complicated. So you could just say that you've been advised that that engages the Equality Act and it's entire, you know, they must give you rational reasons why they're doing that. And just the word complexity is not a rational reason, it's just an observation. I think you could get support from the housing department. I mean, there are grants, as you know, there's a safe facilities grant, but you can also, is your son over 18? Okay, so under the Children Act, you see, the shower is straightforward, and I can't believe that there's a rational reason for if he likes a bath, that's a disability related reason, end of story. And lots of young people with autism, I've done a lot of work on DFGs, just can't stand that sort of pitter patter on their skin, you know, when they've got very sensory impairments. So, you know, it's a well-established issue that's needed. It's not rocket science. You need a rational reason that is a judge is going to see, and you haven't had one of those. You will have to go probably to the Housing Ombudsman on that. The Housing Ombudsman is pretty good, but just say, I wish to make a formal complaint. Download the book that I've just referred to, the Accessing Public Services Toolkit. It's on my website. Yeah, well, you've got to hand. There are grants. Children's Services can help you with that. Now, the garden's going to be more expensive. The Disabled Facilities Grant legislation covers access to the garden. So it's not, it used to be just within the home, making the home accessible and safe. And you're really into the business of safe, not accessible. And so you're going to need quite a lot, and those gardens can be really quite expensive. Because it may involve moving earth and building up quite, presumably your son is quite good at climbing, and things like that. So they can be quite expensive. I'll share with Pamela a video from a housing officer who's at Leeds, where I am, talking about their council did some adaptations that were seriously expensive, but the Children's Services funded it for the housing. Because the consequences of not funding it could be that your son eventually goes into care. I mean, they don't know, you might say that will never happen, but it does occasionally happen. And as you know, probably residential care for people with those sort of needs can be hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. And so there's a very good economic case. So go to the housing association, say you've taken legal advice from me, and that is not a rational reason, and it engages the Equality Act. And on the face of it, constitutes unlawful discrimination. Download the guidance, and I'll send to Pamela that video.
I just want to ask a question. To the carers solution to homelessness.
Say that again, I didn't hear it
What
properly.
is the carers solution to homelessness?
The homelessness.
Yes.
Yes, I mean, it did occur to me with the last question, homelessness. The Housing Act defines homelessness as not having something appropriate to live in effectively with you and the people that normally live with you. So you have situations, there are a number of situations where effectively somebody's living in a house that's unadapted and it's not appropriate for them or the people that occupy it with them. So they are technically homeless under the legislation. So that you can argue that. What you're saying is, so that was the side. Your question is, what if you're a carer for somebody who's homeless?
Directly to me, because I'm facing homelessness.
Oh, I see.
Under Section 21.
Okay.
And I haven't have any solution from anyone.
Right. Well, as you know, it's just such an evil provision, Section 21, isn't it? So this is no fault eviction you're talking about. Yeah. I mean, the solution is to go to the council's housing department and to say that I'm struggling with homelessness. If you're struggling with homelessness, somebody here will know there's a time limit. I think it's within 28 days or something. If you are threatened with homelessness, the housing you should approach the council. Pardon?
The council know about it, but I'm not having any solution from them.
Okay, I get in touch with the shelter helpline. Have you been in touch with shelter?
No.
No. If you Google shelter housing, there is a line, a helpline for shelter, and that's their expertise, and they're very good.
Okay.
And there will be probably almost certainly a local shelter group as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Best of luck. Yeah.
All right, everyone, we're going to have a little break now. Continue the event today, and now we're about to hear the presentation giving you more details about carers assessments and how to get the best out of them. All right.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So, my name is Shona. Some of you might know me from carers assessment or from being at reception. But so I'm one of the carers assessment officers on the assessments team, along with Danny, Alessia, Stephanie, and Amy. Can I stand up? It's because on Zoom, do you really need to see my face? No, on Zoom they can't hear me very well if I get far away. Yeah. So, these are things we're going to cover in this one today. You can't hear me here?
Sit back.
Yeah? Sorry, I can hear stand up, sit down, turn around. Okay, all right.
Stand up.
No, if I stand up, they can't hear me very well. You can hear me? You don't need to see me, you just need to see the presentation. Yeah, okay. So who is entitled to a carer's assessment? And then a bit about, if you haven't had one already, what your carer's assessment will involve. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Okay, so who is entitled to a carer's assessment? So this is primarily about if you are caring for someone over the age of 18. Yeah, then we will be the ones doing your carer's assessment. So it says anyone that has an appearance of need should be offered a carer's assessment. So all of you, when you registered with the carer's centre, would have been offered a carer's assessment. So if you haven't had one and you would like one, you can have one. And if you had one a long time ago, or if your circumstances have changed a lot, you can request a new one, okay? So carer assessments are for adult carers caring for an adult. So if you're caring for someone over the age of 18, the next page is about if you're caring for someone else, if you're of a different age, yeah. The next one, sorry, yeah, thanks. Okay, so there are some other types of carers assessments, like a transitional one. So if, I don't think that applies to anyone here really, but if you are 16, 17 and you are not yet an adult, then we can do a transitional assessment. And there are parent care assessments as well. So, yeah, okay. All right, so if you are caring for a child and they are under the age of 18, there are still assessments that can be done for you, but we wouldn't do them. Those would be done by Children's Social Services. Okay. So, yeah, I think that's fine. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So what is a carer's assessment trying to assess? So being eligible for an assessment doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be eligible for support. So a lot of the time people might think if I have an assessment, that means I'm necessarily going to get money or all these different things. It's really just to see what your needs are. And then to see how we can support you, if there's another service that might be better suited to support you, but it's to give you information, okay? So there would be a statutory duty on the local authority to give support if you are providing necessary care for the person being cared for, and if it's having a significant impact on your life and a long-term negative impact on your ongoing well-being. So obviously that can look different for different people. And that's why the assessment is more of a longer conversation to find out how your caring role is impacting you. I will stop at the end, so if you do have any questions, you can ask me. So on the next slide, we'll see the main things that we try to cover when you have an assessment.
Are you making the slides available?
Yeah, I think the slideshow will be available afterwards. Yeah.
If you don't have an email and you'd like a postal copy, please leave your name with a member of our staff who is appropriate.
Yeah, so we'll share the information after everything's done today. So as you can see, there's quite a few different points that get covered in the assessment, and we're trying to identify all of these needs. So whether you're able to eat well every day, perhaps your caring role stretches you out so much that you don't actually have the energy to cook at the end of the day, or you're busy going here, there and everywhere, and oftentimes you skip lunch. And things like that. Maintaining a habitable home could mean that sometimes the person you're caring for, they really need everything to be very clean and to be clean really regularly. But that can be very exhausting for you. Perhaps you have your own health issues that impact your ability to do that. And so relationships and ability to work, as was mentioned earlier, ability to go out to see your friends, to go get your hair done, to do the shopping, all of those things, we see, are you able to meet those needs while caring? And that's all discussed during your assessment, okay? Go to the next slide. Okay. And so we want to see, are you able to do those things? And how well are you able to do them? Can you do them, but it's really a struggle? Maybe one area is harder than another area, but we just want to look at everything and then take a note of how you say is impacting you. So it's not, if I was meeting with you, it's not that I think, oh yeah, well, you're doing really well. If you say you're struggling, then you are. And that's what would be recorded in your assessment. Yeah. Okay. And then what happens after that? So if it's felt that your well-being is at risk, then the assessing officer should consider what we can do to try and fix that or to help that. Okay, we encourage the carer to consider their own needs and ensure that you're both willing and able to continue caring. And we mentioned what that means earlier as well. And check that you're comfortable undertaking all elements of the care they are currently providing. So sometimes it's not just I can care or I can't. It could be I can do this, but I actually really need help to do that other area. And we record those things as well. Okay, next. Okay, so what does that actually mean? How do we do that? So there are different ways to have your carers assessment. As mentioned, some people like to have it face to face. Yeah, and so we do offer that usually at the carer centre, or it can be over the phone. But really the way that suits you best is how we'll have it. And it's not like an interview or a checklist of things, it's more of a conversation, which if you've had an assessment, hopefully you can attest to that it's a conversation where we just try and cover all of those things that we noted before, and see how you're being affected. Okay, next. Okay, and you will, before your assessment, receive information on what will be involved in that. So usually you would have received from Amy at the back, yeah, by email or in person, or by hard copy, just a booklet that says what a carer's assessment is and what you can expect from it. And hopefully it should be a natural feeling conversation where you don't feel like you're being quizzed, but that you can, that you're working with someone to create a support plan. Okay. So why do we think that it's important to have an assessment, even if maybe you feel like, oh, talking to someone is not going to make any difference? Sorry, he's telling me to hold it even closer to my face. Right, can you hear me now, everyone? Great. So the first reason is that carers often tell us that they can't speak to many professionals, or if they do, they don't feel like they're being heard, like they're saying everything, but no one's actually listening. So the assessment is a place for you to share all of your feelings openly without any sort of judgment. The second benefit is that you can know what support is out there, and there might be things that are available that you haven't heard of. But once you have the information, even if you don't choose to go ahead with it, you can feel better equipped because you know what your options are. And we can tell you about all of those services and then help you to access those services. And then the third one is, even if you are doing really well and you feel very capable, everyone can benefit from help now and again. And the idea is that we don't want you to wait until you can't care anymore, and that's when you come to us. If we speak to you in advance, then hopefully, if you're doing well, we can make it possible for that to continue. And then the last one is that it helps us to get to know you better as well. So we know what's going on with you, and you're not just like a name in the system, but someone that we've met, and then we can check in every so often because you have a care assistant review as well to make sure that your situation hasn't changed, or if it has, how we can change our support of you. Okay. Now we have explained carers assessments. We're hoping that if you haven't had one, you might want one. And so it again mentions our wonderfully efficient administration officer, Amy. I agree with those words too. She can book you for an assessment today, possibly if you meet the criteria. So you can speak to her, not now, but afterwards. Or you can email us or call, when we're back in the office if you want to book an assessment. And if we can't do that, then we'll explain why that is and refer you to somewhere that can. So does anyone have any questions? Wonderful. Okay. All right. Then I think that's me done. Yes.
I didn't say that Fiona stood in to do this presentation at last minute, basically this morning. So thanks very much for covering that. Thank you.
Stand up.
All right, so we're going to move swiftly on to the pension credit presentation, which Tiana, our benefits advisor, is going to do for us.
Hello everybody, nice to see you all. Thank you very much for coming today. And today we're going to have a look into pension credit. I think it's quite a hot topic these days, especially with the announcement that one of the qualifiers for the winter fuel payment is now pension credit. So this is why we're doing this presentation today. So we'll get straight into it and we'll just have a look at an overview. But like I mentioned before, winter fuel payment is quite key. So that is why a lot of people are now very interested in trying to claim for pension credit. So the deadline for this year to be able to get the winter fuel payment, you need to apply for pension credit. So you could go back. Thank you. I'll come to that a bit later on in the slides about applying. But yeah, you need to apply by the 21st of December to qualify for the winter fuel payment if you're accepted for pension credit. So we'll move on to the next slide. So an overview of pension credit. Guarantee pension credit is extra money for people of state pension age who are on low income. And we'll go on to look at what low income really is. But pension credit basically tops up low income to at least the minimum set by the government. So what the government says is the minimum an older person should live on, and that can vary depending on their circumstances. Pension credit is also means tested, so income, savings, those are all things that are considered and looked at. And if you're in a couple, then both people need to be eligible for the state pension. They both need to be of state pension age to claim, usually. There are some exceptions. For example, if the older party of the couple, or if one person is of state pension age and they're getting state pension age housing benefit, that can be an exception for that. Can we move on to the next? Thanks. So the standard minimum guarantee is the minimum amount that the government says that someone of state pension age should live on. So that would be for a single person, as you can see, £218.15, and for a couple that would be £332.95, and that would be per week. So pension credit, the guarantee element of that, tops up low income to the minimum guarantee. And you might actually be eligible for more than that, depending on your circumstances, which we'll go on to in the next slide. But you can see that income would be things you get, or money that you get from benefits, but not disability benefits. So any income related benefits, that's in legacy terms. But so things like carer's allowance would be the most common thing for people in this room that would be counted. Any pensions, so state pension, workplace pension, private pension, any savings and investments, or if you're still working, any earnings from work. But there's some small rules there that we won't go into on this there. But we'll go on to the next. Thanks. So additional amounts. So we spoke about the minimum guarantee and the minimum amount of income that the government says you're supposed to live on. But this can be topped up even more if you have a disability, or if you're a carer, or if you look after a young person. And so if you have a disability, you need to meet the criteria in these slides here. So you would need to get a qualifying disability benefit. So for somebody of state pension age, that may be all three of them, to be honest. It could be DLA for adults, if you're still eligible for that, if you're still receiving that. Could be attendance allowance, or it could even be as well, depending on your circumstances and your age. You'd need to be living alone or treated as living alone. And treated as living alone means that somebody, the person you live with, the person you're probably married to, or you're in a couple with, they would also be getting a disability benefit, or they might be visually impaired or blind. So that's something that's good to know. And also another qualifier is that nobody gets carer's allowance for you. It gets paid carer's allowance for you. We'll go into underlying entitlements, but that is something to keep in mind. So if you're a carer, you'd get an additional amount of £45.60 added to the minimum guarantee. And that would include if you receive the underlying entitlement to carer's allowance. So that is when you can't actually be paid carer's allowance because of another benefit that you receive, such as state pension, but you would still get that amount added to your entitlement. And also here we've got the rules for if you're responsible for a qualifying young person or a child, and you can see the amounts there. So we'll move on to the next slide, please. So your pension credit award would be your appropriate amount minus your total income. So we've spoken about the standard minimum guarantee, what the government says you should live on, plus any additional amounts you might be entitled to because of your circumstances, whether you're disabled, whether you're a carer, or whether you care for a young person. So we've got an example here that Jean and Howard are a couple. Howard receives attendance allowance and Jean has an underlying entitlement to carers allowance. So we see that the standard allowance, because they're a couple, is £332.95. The carer addition, because Jean receives carers allowance, is £45.60. So their appropriate amount, what the government says they should be able to live on because of their circumstances, is £378.55. So then their total income we can see on the right is £320.65, and because of their circumstances, the money they've got coming in. So if we just click to the result, so their guaranteed pension credit award would be the difference between those two numbers, which is £57.90 in this case. So somebody shouted out, how do you apply? You can apply online for pension credit. The process is quite simple, I'd say. You just need to have things like your bank statements, any details of investments you have, and any income coming in, your national insurance number, date of birth, all of those kinds of things. You can apply online, so you can apply on phone as well. The phone number's there if you did want to take a picture. I think we can also get a copy of these slides to you as well. And you can also apply by post. You could call up and ask for a form and then send that back, or you can download one online and then you can post that back to them. You can apply for pension credit 4 months before you reach state pension age. Sorry. Thanks. And you can backdate your claim by 3 months, but you have to ask for it. That's something that I found out recently. It's not automatic that you'd get the backdate for 3 months as long as you're eligible. You have to ask for that, and that's very important with the winter fuel payment, that you ask for that backdate, because then that means that if you apply by the 21st of December and you ask for the backdate, you meet that eligibility criteria for the winter fuel payment. So other help you can get if you do get pension credit, you may end up being entitled to housing benefit, support for mortgage interest, council tax support, TV license if you're over 75, NHS cost help, the warm home discount, and one thing I didn't know, which was the Royal Mail redirection service. So that's the help you can get. So it's so important. Even if your pension credit award is pennies even, just apply. It's definitely worth applying. A lot of people think that they are not eligible because they have savings, because they might have quite a good pension. But it's always worth getting independent advice and seeing if you could be eligible, because it can really help you out. Again, I just really want to push the winter fuel payment because it's so important. So just remember, 21st of December, apply for pension credit by then. And then if you're successful, then you'd be able to get that fuel payment for this year. And if you need any other benefits advice, this is my email. You can also call us or call up our centre and you can be added to our waiting list. It is quite long. It can be a bit of a wait, but I'll get to you as soon as I can, and I can help primarily with disability benefit queries and also carers allowance, and I do take on pension credit here and there as well. Thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions, then... Hello.
Down with that oil.
Yes.
Didn't say anything about it.
I said a lot about it, I think, right. But that's okay. Yeah, 21st of December, please apply for the winter fuel payment by then. That is the key. The key to the winter fuel payment, sorry, is pension credit. So apply for pension credit by 21st of December to be able to get the winter fuel payment for this year. Okay. Any other questions? Because I've it will be state pension age. That does vary. Right now, I believe it is 66 state pension age. but that will go up a bit to about 68 over the next decade.
So if you're a couple and one is at state pension age and the other one isn't, you definitely won't be eligible for pension credit, is that correct?
So it varies. Of course, for Zoom, yeah. So your question was about mixed couples. So if one person is over state pension age, one person is under, and they're definitely not eligible for pension credit. Not necessarily. It is very circumstantial. It just depends on the age and the date of birth. It depends on certain cut-off time periods. So it'd be good to get independent advice on your actual circumstances, but generally no. But there are certain caveats. Could be from me, it could be from Citizens Advice, just any benefits advice that can help you.
Would it be right to say, if in doubt, try and apply?
Absolutely.
So if you've got a couple, different ages, obviously very near to pension age, apply, because you may or may not fit the criteria. It's government rules, so sadly, you know, it's really not easy to say it's this, it's that. Very easy if you're both 66, clearly, but not always. All right? Any other questions? No? All right, lovely. So I'm going to ask Lily, oh, another round of applause for Tiana. All right, so now we're going to go into the next presentation. It's talking about the work that we do, and that Lillian does particularly, with GP surgeries throughout the borough of Enfield.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lilian Odegu, and I am the GP liaison worker at Enfield Care Center. Let's go back to the agenda, please. The top topics we'll be discussing today will include a brief introduction about myself and my role. We'll talk about a pilot project we're currently running with NCL ICB, which is North Central London Integrated Care Board. We will also discuss our key achievements so far, outline our challenges and outcomes, and then I can take any questions you may have for me. Next slide, please. As I previously said, my name is Lilian Odegu, and I am the GP liaison worker at Enfield Care Center. I have been active in this position for about 8 months. And before I started this position, I used to volunteer as a carers ambassador. So I have a wealth knowledge of being a carer as well. So even though I am working with Enfield Carers, I am still a carer. And my contact details is gpsupport@enfieldcarers.org if you want to reach me. Next slide, please. I'm going to start by giving you a slide overview on how GP surgeries are structured in Enfield. At the moment, we have 46 GP surgeries in Enfield, and we have 5 primary care networks, which are kind of called PCN in short, of which each of the GP surgery is ascribed to. And the list of the PCN as follows. We have Edmonton Primary Care Network, Enfield Care Network, Enfield Southwest Network, Enfield Unity, and West Enfield Collaborative Network. I must also mention that under Enfield Unity consists of 12 GP surgeries that are currently being managed by Medicus, which you must have heard. My manager, Mark, I can hear you laughing. Apologies. Now that brings me to the pilot project. As I mentioned in the agenda, we are currently running a pilot project which was developed with the help of North Central London Integrated Care Board. And the aim of the pilot project in general is to just provide a more focused carers awareness in the primary care settings. It also helps to demonstrate that it's actually good practice to highlight the importance of identifying and supporting carers within the primary care settings as well. At the moment, there are 3 PCNs which are currently participating in this pilot project, and they are Enfield Unity, Edmonton Primary Care Network, and West Enfield Collaborative Network. How are we executing this project? We are executing the primary project by holding regular information and awareness stands at 3 specific surgeries under each of the PCN. So for example, under Enfield Unity, we are executing the project by running awareness and information stand at Forest Road Group Practice, Under Edmonton Primary Care, we are executing the project by running regular awareness and information stand at Angel Surgery, and under West Enfield Collaborative Network, we are executing the project by running regular awareness and information stand at Winchmore Hill Practice. In addition to the awareness and information stand we run regularly at these surgeries, we also work closely with the practice managers, where we aim to educate both their clinical and non-clinical staff members on the importance of identifying and referring carers to Enfield Carer Center. And we do know that by referring carers to Enfield Carer Center, where they can access the services and the support we offer to them, we can improve their physical and mental health, which in return will reduce the number of visits these carers will pay to their GP. Next slide. Key achievements so far. We have a close working relationship with Enfield GP Federation, where they help push for a more partnership work at PCN level. Following that, we recently running an SMS campaign focusing on carers awareness with Enfield Southwest PCN that is currently ongoing. And the campaign will run by sending 2 batches of SMS text to patients. The first batch will be focusing on clearly explaining who a carer is according to our Enfield carers description of who a carer is, and asking the recipients of the text if they identify themselves as a carer by responding either yes or no. Then the second batch of text will be sent only to those who have responded yes to the previous text, where they will be giving more information about Enfield Carer services, what we do, how we support them, the benefit of registering with us. We added onto the text an online Enfield registration carers link, where they can register with us if they are digitally savvy, and those who are struggling with digital can then contact the center and we can send them a physical copy of registration form. We also ensure that we send posters, newsletters, and all relevant ECC resources out to every GP surgery in Enfield. Previously, we did run an Enfield Carers awareness campaign with Sargate Surgery, where we sent information about Enfield Carer Center and the services we provide for carers and the benefit of them registering with us or under their practice. So the Sargate Surgery sent it to carers who are already identified in their database, and informing them about our center, and encouraging them to come and register with us. We do also hold regular information and awareness stand at many more GP surgeries. So not only do we hold the ones we have in our pilot project that I mentioned before, we do have regular ones we hold at other surgeries, such as Evergreen. We hold one regularly every Tuesday. We do have one at Riley House and Moorfield Health Center. We have one also going on with Oakwood Medical Health Center. Other things we have done is we do also have ad hoc and information awareness stands sometimes with other GP surgeries. For example, in the past few months, Anos Group were running an open day event, surgery open day event, and they asked for us to hold an information and awareness stand, and which we were happy to do. We do also have good collaboration work with Edmonton PCN, where we do hold information and awareness stand at some of their community events. In the past, we had one about 2 months ago where they had a community event at 4th Street Library, and we had an information and awareness stand there. We do very much work with PPG, which is Patient Participation Group Network meetings. We're very involved with the Patient Participation Group in Enfield and North Central London as well. Okay. We also do make sure that we do visit every single GP at least once in a quarter, just to update them with resources, continue to inform them about the work our center is doing, because we do know that staff do change hand, teams do change. So by going there once every quarter, we are still making our presence known, and people can continue to come in, even when the staffs are changed, to remember that the center is there to support carers. I must also point out that we have been able to achieve most of these things with the support of our dedicated carers ambassador. I can see Rumit there. Thank you, Rumit, for all you do. Few statistics I would like to point out is that from the month of April, I started this job in March. Mark, am I right? Yeah. So from the month of April to September 2024, we have taken in 70 new registrations under the GP project, and we have held over 150 awareness and information stand, as well as GP visits. Next slide, please. Now comes our challenges and outcomes. One of the key challenges that I personally have found, and I'm sure my manager Mark will also concur, is that we have been trying for a while to get to the back office of the GP surgeries, because if we can work together with them, we can quickly assess the carers, we can identify them, and subsequently refer them quickly to Enfield Carer Center. And that has been a very big challenge, because we all know how GP surgeries run. They give us many excuses. They are very busy. They have so much to do, and we keep pushing, but it's still a challenge that we wish and hope to overcome one day. We want to also continue to raise carers awareness by educating more of the primary care staff on how to identify carers and the importance of supporting them. I've mentioned, I kind of covered the third bullet point in the first one. So we also want to continue having good collaboration work at the PCN level, because we believe that if we work at the PCN level, either than working single-handedly with each GP practice, we can make more impact, because it can trickle down from the PCN level to all the surgeries that are under their membership. Our desired outcomes most of our desired outcomes really would be to have an increased number of carers referred to Enfield Carer Center. We want more carers to access the services and the support Enfield carers offer. We want to improve the outcome for carers, because if the carers are referred to us and are registered under us and they can access our services, in so doing, we help to promote their physical and mental health, which in return will reduce the pressures that the GP surgeries have by carers calling them all the time and booking appointments, because we all know that you don't go to the GP if you're mentally okay and you're physically well. GP is not a path that we enjoy to go to anyway. That's my 2 cents. Anyway, that brings me to the end of my presentation. Any questions, please? Yeah.
I think there's a having passion for health.
Speak up, sorry.
Oh, thank you for that. And I see you have so much passion for helping Enfield carers in particular. Personally trying to find out about this, that I've got my sisters who don't live within the Enfield borough. However, they do provide support services and caring services to my mom who lives within the Enfield. So is that some sort of support that you will be able to support somebody even though they don't live within the Enfield borough?
I believe that once you're caring for someone within the Enfield borough, you can still register under Enfield Carer Center.
Okay.
Yes, so your sisters are covered if they can register. So,
Can I just qualify that as well? You have to register the primary carer, so the one in the family who's been the most caring for that individual. So whilst your sisters, for example, they could register as secondary carers, they won't all be able to access all of the things that we provide, because clearly it's a charity, so it's going to go so far, and we focus on the main person providing the care. Thank you.
Thank you. There's just, I think, one category of residents that you miss out on. There are a lot of Enfield residents around the borough who actually have surgeries outside of the borough. For example, I'm an Enfield resident. My surgery is in Barnet. So I get excluded out of what you're proposing on here.
Would you answer that? Because I'm a bit of being.
I mean, really, the only thing I could say to that is there is a carer centre in Barnet, so we could possibly get support from them. if you're registered with us because the person you care for is in Enfield, is that what you're saying? Oh, you're in Enfield. Yeah, I mean, obviously, surgeries in Enfield, that's where our work is, because we're an Enfield-based organisation. But you're more than happy to connect with us, have a conversation. If we can support in some way, that's fine. But it's difficult for us to influence outside of the house.
Just fulfill that answer as well. Obviously we're funded mainly by Enfield Council. Okay, so Barnet will fund Barnet Carer Centre. So you should be able to get support services from Barnet Carer Centre as well. But the GP pilot is something that Enfield surgeries have agreed to participate in. Now it may well be that Barnet Carer Centre are also trying to do the same, trying to connect with the surgeries in Barnet. But obviously that's their piece of work and we can't encroach on that. If you care for somebody who lives in Enfield, then you can access all of our services. If you live in Enfield but the person you care for lives out of the borough, then we can give you a measure of support in terms of advice and information. But things like respite, carers assessments, a time for a break activities, those kind of things have to be provided by the borough in which the person you care for lives. Yes, and those are the rules, they're set by the government. Your surgery is outside. Yeah, so, no, that's right, that's right. So I would definitely recommend though that you do get in touch with Barnet Carer Centre because they may well be trying to make those strides with Barnet GPs. And so it would be quite good if you had. But you can explain to them that your GP is there and you just want to know, this is a question, so it's advice and information, they can give that to you. You just want to know whether they are having any communications with GPs in that borough. That's fair enough. Any other questions?
If there is a reason for not, Haringey Council does so much for the residents of Haringey. I don't live in Haringey, but I will tell you one or two. They do weight loss, they do smoking, how to stop smoking, how to stop drinking, just the computer courses, and they're all free. I'm just wondering, for Enfield, such a lovely council, and I've enjoyed living here in the borough for 42 years.
I'm a little bit confused. Is the question for Enfield Carer Centre or are you asking a question towards Enfield Council?
Okay, so obviously we don't work for Enfield Council, so we're not going to be able to answer why they don't fund certain things. But what I do know is that they fund quite a lot of voluntary and community groups to provide some of those things we're talking about. So health and well-being, there's a whole lot of funding that's going into many organisations in Enfield to help them provide help for residents to improve their long-term care, to manage their long-term conditions. What was the other thing that you said? Computer, smoking and drinking, that's all being handled by the NHS. There are a lot, oh my goodness, they are putting so much money into smoking cessation and, the whole of the council's public health team and the NHS, there are a lot of initiatives, aren't there?
We have well-being support services. Yeah.
So there are quite a few things happening. Sometimes, it's really difficult to get hold of where the information is, but there's an awful lot of money being spent in all of those areas that you're talking about within the borough. So it might be that only, not everybody's eligible for all of these things, but they are certainly happening. So, and sorry, you were saying here that there was
Thanks, you just answered my question. So yes, if you wanted to, sorry, I'm not sure your name at the back. If you wanted to connect with us at the centre, my team from the Enfield Wellbeing Network can have a conversation with you, particularly around things like smoking cessation, put in direction of other services that you might be interested in. So you can call us at Enfield Wellbeing, at Enfield Care Centre for any wellbeing support. Some of it we'll be able to provide, some of it might have to signpost you to.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Lillian, thanks very much. Okay, so we're going to continue with the last presentation today. I thought you were a double act.
Yeah, we're double that.
I told you after, didn't I? So there's a rumour that myself and the next guest speaker are a double act, but we're going to play it straight today. Should I be standing? I've waited all day for this, and now I've got to sit down. So firstly, I'm going to do a sound check. Can you hear me? Excellent. Didn't actually realise there's a camera. I'd have known I'd have had a wash this morning. So it's my anniversary today. It's actually my anniversary of starting work of Enfield Carers. It was 7 years ago on this day, and my first role was in GP and hospitals. And today, you've already heard Lillian talk to you about her role in primary care. What Lillian didn't tell you, because she's very modest, is the amount of work and effort she's put into the last 8 months. It's been relentless. She's done a fantastic job. Some of the numbers you've seen come through. But like the rest of the team at Enfield Care Centres, and in my last 7 years, we're always there to support you. We work relentlessly on your behalf. And with that, I'm going to move on to my presentation, which is general hospital activity. So you've heard about primary care. So I'm going to touch on North Middlesex Hospital and its safe for discharge, as well as the general hospital activity. And my colleague Arthur, the second part of the double act, is going to talk to you about the mental health Enfield Carers that we do, and specifically a little bit about the mental health safe for discharge program that we've been running. Next slide, please. So did I introduce myself? No. Oh. So my name is Mark Warwick. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Manager. And as such, some of the things that we do, some of the programs we run are in GPs, hospitals. We work with mental health carers of people who have mental health issues. And we are very active. My team are very active in the community. So most of my team are out and about. Thinking specifically of hospitals, there are 4 hospitals in the borough. You can see them on the screen. North Middlesex Hospital, Chase Farm, St Michael's, and Barnet Hospital. We have different levels of interaction with each hospital, and I'm just going to run through roughly what we do. So North Mid, we are part of the community hub. We have access to all areas in North Middlesex Hospital. We're part of the staff induction programme. We run regular advice and information stands. We have a lot of partnerships with people like Macmillan and some of the other clinics. And we also work with Alpha Care. Chase Farm, St Michael's and Barnet, you can see going down the list we have similar but less impact. But that's something we're working on. Next slide, please. So just thinking about Enfield Care Centre. So I've very cleverly cut it into quarters, cut this slide into quarters, so you can see in the top left-hand corner who. So we have a really, we have quite a big team at Enfield, at North Middlesex Hospital, comprising of staff, sessional workers, carers ambassadors who we mentioned once or twice. We have a healthcare trainer. We're currently recruiting for a carers communications coordinator. And we're present maybe 3 to 4 days a week in different aspects of the hospital. Some of the things that we do, we promote awareness clearly. That's a big part of what we do. So that's awareness of carers. We're looking to work with senior executives, staff on the ground. We're active in wards with clinical leads. We spend time talking to discharge teams, social workers and virtual discharge teams, as well as the other support teams such as OT, physios, etc. But not forgetting carers, patients and family members. So we're talking to people on the ground all the time, from the top of the trust board to patients walking through the door. How do we do it? So we meet with all new staff. So we have a slot on the corporate induction day, which is every couple of weeks. So we have about 30 to 40 minutes to talk about carers and raise awareness for every single new member of staff that starts at North Mid, who's working with the dementia teams, and a little bit beyond that as well. So clearly we're trying to get people as they start work at North Mid. We're building on relationships with our comms teams. If you walk through North Middlesex Hospital, you'll see our branding and our videos on the big TVs. We have an on-site carer support device stand. We support people in doing online care referrals, one-to-one conversations. We have weekly ward and clinic visits, and of course, we don't forget distributing our newsletters. Some of the next steps we want to engage with, some of the next steps we need to do. Because the trust at North Mid, some of you might know, has recently merged with Royal Free, a lot of our contacts are changing, so it's quite difficult for us to maintain some of the relationships that we've had. So we're trying to build new contacts with the new trust managers. A key thing is we want the trust to adopt our safer discharge, carer safer discharge program as policy. It's a big piece of work that we've been funded for. It's been quite difficult to get the trust board to adopt it as policy, but actually we're working on the ground, helping people to understand what safer discharge is, both from trust executives right through to clinical staff. We're looking to recruit a carers communications coordinator, which is what I've just said, so if anyone wants to apply. We're always recruiting volunteers and carers ambassadors, so if you want to apply for one of those and you think you've got the time, give me a shout at the end of the day. We continue to raise carers awareness and fulfil the requirements of our safer discharge project. Have I got another slide? Oh, I have. Any questions? Yes. The mic's coming.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very, very much fascinated by Lillian's story from being an ambassador to the role that she is doing now. All this is because of the support that Enfield Carer Centre is providing. So for me personally, I would want to be interested in the ambassador role. And as a carer of my mom, I'm quite busy with a lot of things. So that means even though I want to progress myself from my place of work, okay, I work with NHS, but sometimes the work with NHS is so stressful, is so demanding, is so much. And with this charity, it seems to be a charity that really supports the carers a lot. So is there any opportunities whereby you guys are able to put up any vacancies within the within your organization, so that some of us who really want to give it back to the carer center, there will be an opportunity for us to also have such opportunities, if that is possible?
Yes. Yes is the short answer. All of our vacancies are always advertised on our website. And do you like the new branding, by the way? Has anyone seen all our new signage and our logos? So on our website, our vacancies are advertised, or you can call in and ask. Something you said resonated with me, because Luke mentioned it earlier. It's quite difficult for people who want to work and they're carers, or want to give something back in the amount of time that you've got. There are more. Lillian was a carers ambassador, as you've mentioned, Lillian mentioned, and we were able to, or Lillian was able to fit that work in around her carer's role. So we're always amenable to working with people who have voluntarily given up their time. Beyond that, Lynn was not the only person who was a carer's ambassador, who was also a carer. A number of us have come as started as volunteers and moved on to paid roles. Some people have come from the young carers as a young carer all the way through to working staff. And I think as an organisation, it's one of the best organisations I've worked for that type of thing. So, like I said earlier, give us a call or come talk to someone at the end of the day, or ring in on the main number and we can have a chat. Any other questions? Okay, I shall now hand over to. No need. Honestly, there's no need. So, I'll hand over to my colleague Arthur Hasler. Arthur.
Good afternoon. As Mark says, my name's Arthur and I'm a volunteer at the Carer Centre, and my involvement here is that I was asked to become involved with the mental health discharge project. So I'll be concentrating on that, but covering some other areas. And just to clarify a point that Mark raised earlier, the reason that we're not doing it as a double act today is that the event organisers realised that traditionally you put the star turn on last. So sorry about that, Mark. Okay, we wanted just to give you a briefing as to what's happening in terms of mental health and helping mental health carers at Enfield Carers Centre at the moment. What I would stress is that none of this is to the exclusion of other groups, because what we do as an organisation is learn from best practice in different areas. So what works in one area, we transfer to another. So you'll see some overlap with some of the things that Mark's already talked about. And if things are developed in terms of mental health carers that we feel we can apply elsewhere, then we'll be doing that. So we have a number of people involved in mental health carers, including Mark, who's the Health and Wellbeing Manager. We have the Carers Advice Support Manager, many of you will know Dan. I'm at the moment project manager for the Mental Health Discharge Project, and we have support workers. So there's a lot of resource goes into this field within the centre. I'm going to be fairly brief, partly because we're running out of time, and there's, as I say, there is an overlap with some of the things that have been said, but also because you will find that when you get the January newsletter, there is an article in there that explains a number of the things that we're talking about today. So hopefully that will help. So some of the things that we're doing, we have the Safer Discharge Project, and I'll come back to that in a moment. We're represented by Pam on the Mental Health Partnership Board, so we have a voice there on your behalf. We have one-to-one counselling, and we run a bereavement group. I mean, I would say about our counselling service that it's substantially cheaper than a lot of alternatives that you'll find, and also we do have lower waiting lists than a number of similar organisations. So it's an area that we're very proud of. As you know, we offer one-to-one support and advice to all carers, but certainly to carers those with mental health issues. We run monthly wellbeing sessions, we have health and wellbeing support. Partly in response to the Mental Health Carers Conference that we had earlier, we've resurrected the Mental Health Carers Support Group, and I believe that's now being well attended. And I'd add on to that we also have a Learning Disabilities and Autism Support Group. So as you can see, it's a lot of activity going on. How we approach that, the first point about meeting new staff comes under the project, so I'll come back to that. But we are constantly promoting the needs of carers in Enfield. we had the Mental Health Carers Conference, and for us, that was very much a listening experience, listening to what you have to say to us. And I think we learned a lot from that. And it was I thought, a very vibrant conference. And it was clear that there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of issues, a lot of frustration that was being voiced there that needs to be addressed. And, you know, we'll certainly work to try and help with that. So we're looking to influence policy, follow up on that carers conference and the other feedback that we get. We're also actively trying very hard to increase attendance at the various groups we have, because we believe that peer-to-peer support is a very important part of the work that we do. Hopefully you're receiving now our monthly bulletins, which tell you the events that are happening at the care centre month by month. And we're looking to appoint an additional mental health carers ambassador, as Mark said. Anybody who's interested, let us know. So, as I say, a good deal of activity, but I wanted to skip on, if I may, to the Safer Discharge mental health carers, mental health project. Some of you will have heard of this before, so just to very briefly recap on this. We were asked by the previous mental health trust to work with them to what the outcomes that we wanted to all achieve were that those, what they would refer to as patients, we refer to as cared for, going into hospital, going less frequently for shorter periods and have less readmissions, but also very significantly that the role of the carer as part of the team supporting the care for stroke patient is recognised within the NHS, and that from their point of view, best use is made of the carer as a resource, but also that you as the carer are informed and made part of the team, rather than being treated, as sometimes we know has happened, as being an outsider and kept slightly distant. This project, I think it became slightly becalmed for a while. One of the reasons for that is that you'll probably know that there was the formation recently of a new mental health trust, the North London Mental Health Partnership, which now, as well as Barnet, Enfield and Haringey, includes the Camden and Islington Trust. So they've all merged. The problem that happens with large organisations when that kind of thing is going through is that nobody knows where they stand. They don't know if they're going to be in the same job the next time you visit. There's a lot of uncertainty. It's hard to push forward. And also, I think it's fair to say that in the NHS, whilst the people within it do a great job and great things are being done, as an organisation, it does suffer from what a lot of large organisations suffer from, a certain inertia. It's very hard to push them. And so you really have to kind of choose your moment and ride the wave. And a couple of things have happened. Certainly, we saw the Darcy review of the NHS, and it was interesting that carers were specifically mentioned in that, which I think was a positive thing. And they were also specifically mentioned in the government's response to the Darcy review. So at a national level, there was some recognition coming forward. At a more local level, the North London Mental Health Partnership was formed, people were put in place, they knew where they stood, there was greater certainty, we knew who we could work with, and they clearly saw the value of working with us, and I hope creating a model of excellence, because one of the things that they want to do, being such a very large trust now, is to, obviously we're working at a local level, we're concerned with Enfield, as mentioned in a different context earlier, but they want to use examples of best practice so that, again, different parts of the organisation learn from each other. And I think that that's something that we're showing the way in terms of Enfield. So anyway, we've resurrected the project. We're pushing. There is greater energy about the whole thing. We've made some progress. We've had some very good meetings with them, whereas before we were struggling to have those meetings. We've been invited to their induction meetings with new staff. Now, this is very significant for us because over the next year or so, we're committed to going to the induction meetings. So we will effectively have the chance to speak to every new member of staff in the Enfield area for the trust and to get our message across. And we had the first one of these very recently. And I think it was significant that we were given a 1 hour slot and other areas of the organisation were going in with 20, 30-minute slots. So I think that gives you some idea that they do recognise that we have something to say and some value to bring to what they're doing. We had I thought, a very energetic, a very empowered meeting with the staff. We were able to get them thinking about what carers can bring to the work that they do, and again, the values that they can add. And we got them to think about the necessity to make sure that you get good information, timely information, that you're included, that they learn from your experience of the cared for or the patient. And that all of these things are valuable, and that if you are in the best position to help the discharge at the end of that process, that discharge is much more likely to be successful, that there won't be readmission. So I think that was really a very productive thing. We're also running an advice and information stand, which will be there, is it weekly, Mark? Monthly. At Chase Farm, and already we've got some good feedback from professionals there. We got some very positive feedback from the induction meeting that we had. So we're making very good progress on that. We're meeting them in January to review all of this. And again, as I say, we want to make sure that we reach the whole of the staff body with our message. We did talk originally as part of the project about producing some videos for them. We've talked about that and decided that the videos themselves do tend to have a very short shelf life. So we've instead decided that we're going to be using our website as a kind of library of resources for both organisations to bring information that's of value to you and professionals. To make sure that you're informed, you know what's happening, and also that the professionals can gain from our experience. So all that's been developed. So the project, I can say, is now moving. We're looking to push forward for another year, and I think that's very positive. I hope, as I say, there will be a recap of all of this in the January newsletter. So I think, bearing in mind the time, I will stop there and ask if there are any questions. Yes.
What are you doing to measure the effect? Because I think the experience for lots of carers is that they tell professionals what's going on, and professionals nod, and it's all part of inclusion, and then actually nothing happens. And so your effort in actually spending the time explaining how your role works, what actually happens at home, isn't taken on board, but the tick box is ticked because the care is in the room. And I'd like to know how you're measuring the effect of carers' involvement and how you know that professionals are taking it on board.
I think it's a valid point that in terms of, you talk about this as a project, and normally with a project you would have measurable outcomes, and it is difficult to measure these outcomes. I think we are going to be relying a lot on feedback from the NHS about the rates of readmission and so on.
You should rely on feedback from carers as well.
Well,
because we know
that's a very good point.
that
Thank
our
you.
views
Yes.
go into the air and nothing seems to change.
Yes, I mean, it will be what more we term a soft measurement in that it will be largely based on the anecdotes and so on that we get back, but that is nevertheless valuable. So we don't have the kind of hard definition of outcomes that you would see with some projects, but I don't think that in any way reduces the value of what we're doing. And certainly the feedback that we've received so far has been very positive. But thank you for that.
And I'll just add, thanks, Arthur. I'll just add to that through the last three presentations, what's been key is that we get professionals. They refer accounts. That's not the only. They refer accounts. Staff accounts. So says some sets. We will work with those sets. So that is one way. So we expect to see a number of referrals coming from services or the work. So we have
We're very happy with this private service accommodation. The money seems to be coming through, but there were two other tenants, and one of them is okay, and the other one we don't think should be in this accommodation. We think that this person is incapable of reforming, becoming a more integrated person. She goes berserk. She can't be trusted with daily medication. She has to have an injection from time to time. They have to call the police to take her back to Chase Farm. I'll be talking about. We have dialogue for
Ms. Mascarenas? Yeah, I think we're in there. Oh, I'm sorry, gone back. So I was just waiting for. So it's quite a tough one to answer that in a quick one just above. It's obviously about projects and an overview of what we're doing. Service provider, social services, social bodies. I think we've done that. So that's like I said, but I think time for one more question.
Sometimes you want to go out and you go hard to look, yeah, like everybody does. So reduction, get everybody in, care for my wife, duration I want to have. I'm hearing some storytelling that someone got stabbed and this and the other. Well, people who come and look after people who are vetted in the respect. Sorry, you know, I'm not mocking them. I love Enfield Council. I've been in 50 years, and then built carers are magnificent. But there's just some storytelling which is worrying me.
That's fine. No, listen, a very brief answer. It's not the whole answer. There was a story very recently in the local paper, which is horrific about a carer. I think there's a lot more behind it. I've worked in care. I've worked in home care services. Yes, there are some issues. Service. Like, I guess in the organisations, having said that, they are all vetted. Every worker who works for a respective organisation should be CRB checked, references, And I see a DBS check now, sorry, and that's a very significant check, you know, looks at their criminal history, et cetera, et cetera. So I wouldn't let it put you off, although I know it's worrying. No, there's no dampener in here, we're all positive, we're all party, no dampeners here. So I think that's probably the last question. So I'm going to let Pam finish up, no problem, no problem.
Lovely, thank you so much to all of you for supporting the event. So before you all rush off, we've got some tablets and some members of staff that can help you to fill in an evaluation form, and we've got some pen and paper evaluation forms. So please do fill them out, and I'm sure members of our staff will help you do that. Oh, and also if you have a copy of the yeah, you can either scan this QR code and it will take you straight to the evaluation form. But also if you have a copy of the agenda, it has the QR code on the bottom. So you can just scan that and it'll go straight to an electronic copy of the form. So yes, if you could fill that out, we've got a couple of pens here as well that you can use to fill them out. If you have the pens back, that'd be really great.
Just call me some. That's easy. Yeah.